Chapter 551, Heavenly Thunder Sect. What's your idea? Zhang Han asked. He looked pale while illuminated by the giant lightning. It seemed that they couldn't escape from the natural disaster. Zhang Han was afraid of the endless lightning strikes. Zhang Han took a glance at his right side and then turned his gaze at the giant lightning. Suddenly, his body glowed with gold. In terms of energy, a lightning made by martial artists was always more powerful than a normal lightning. Zhang Han decided to resist that giant thunder directly, because he wanted to know what was hiding behind it. Just at that moment, they saw a man in a green robe running towards them from the right side. He was Wang Zanping. Wang Zanping kept setting a raise with the mountains and rivers flag in his hand, which was glowing. He recognized Zhang Han and Zhang Han. Then he burst out shouting, "Wow, Han, are you the target of this giant lightning? Put on this robe and save me from the pursuers." There were 3 green robes hanging on Wang Zanping's waist, and he gave Zhang Han and Zhang Han 2 of them. Zhang Han took a glance at him and realized what had happened. The robe could keep them from being tracked by the lightning. Whoosh! Zhang Han put on the robe as fast as he could. Zoom! A green light appeared on Zhang Han and soon disappeared. But what he didn't notice was that the light was moving rapidly in a certain direction along the ground. Zhang Han took over the robe but didn't put on it immediately. Crack! The giant lightning approached him. The lightning was so long that it spent 1 minute to completely land on Zhang Han. Zhang Han successfully resisted it. He didn't move after that. Why not put on the robe? The pursuers are about to break my array. Wang Zanping was nervous. Who is chasing you? Zhang Han looked to the right warily. There was nothing but trees. They seemed to be ghosts at the Grandmaster late stage. It's difficult to get rid of them. Wang Zanping was frightened. With Zhang Han by his side, he felt more at ease. When his 2 friends were talking, Zhang Han took a deep breath and began relaxing his body. He was numbed by the lightning and it took him some time to recover. If he hadn't used Yilong Yuan's golden armor, it would have been more difficult for him to recover. Zhang Han took a glance at the green robe and found it normal, but such a normal robe could protect him from the lightning. What kind of ghost? Zhang Han raised his head and asked Wang Zanping. There seems to be a sect. I found a large mountain after entering the relic, and there were some old houses at its feet, which looked like a mountain villa. The fog surrounding the houses was a little frightening. When I found the lightning growing stronger, I broke into a house, which seemed to be the main residence of the servants. That house had no decoration and I found the robes there. Wang Zanping recalled something that made him shiver with fear. After I put on the robe, I found another man in that house, who had suddenly appeared in front of me. He looked at me with no emotion, and I escaped from that house in fear. A sect? Zhang Han was surprised. In order to know the truth of this relic, I must go and investigate that sect. Wang Zanping turned his gaze at somewhere behind Zhang Han, and his face suddenly changed. He's coming, he broke my array. Where is he? Zhang Han looked around but found nothing. Han, he's coming, he is 50 meters away from me. Wang Zanping suddenly pointed to their right. There's no one there. Zhang Han shook his head, feeling that it was weird. Humphrey? Zhang Han frowned. He didn't see anyone with either his eyes or his soul sense. Must I put on this robe? Zhang Han hadn't worn the robe yet because he wanted to wait for the next lightning, while Zhang Han still couldn't see the ghost after putting on the robe. Luckily, at the moment Zhang Han could use a method to see through the illusion. Zoom. A large amount of soul sense began gathering in Zhang Han's eyes. He was going to open his ghost eyes. All of a sudden, Zhang Han's eyes turned red. The scene changed in front of him, and everything he saw also turned red. Then he found a stranger tens of meters away from him. It was a long-haired young man in a robe similar to Wang Zanping's, holding an iron bar in his hand. He was running towards Wang Zanping angrily. It looked as if Wang Zanping had stolen something from him. Master Wang, try to attack him, Zhang Han said. Okay. Wang Zanping replied and clapped his hands. 2 streams of spiritual force formed a half-meter-long palm. which started to attack the ghost. However, the huge palm went straight through the man's body and landed on the ground behind him. Zoom. That man became more angry and fastened his pace. "This kind of attack doesn't work. Only an array can restrict him," said Wang Zanping, wiping his cold sweat. Zhang Han waited until the young man was 20 meters away from him. King Ming steel. He threw out a special King Ming steel totally made by his soul sense. However, that mysterious man suddenly disappeared. Before he disappeared, he gave a resentful look at Zhang Han, as if he had done something evil. "It's a local soul made by a treasure in that sect. Let's go have a look," Zhang Han said slowly. "A soul made by a treasure?" Wang Zanping was surprised, and then his eyes lit up. "There are treasures in that sect? Damn it, it must be a high-level treasure. Can it be at the holy level?" Tannen asked. "Only treasures at about the divine level could produce a soul." Zhang Han's words shocked them. There were different kinds of local souls. The local soul they had met just then was made by a treasure in that sect, according to someone's character or deeds. The local soul appeared just then and was produced according to a servant at the Grand Master late stage. That sect seemed to be powerful. Although that local soul was not a real martial artist at the Grand Master late stage, it was frightening enough to warn Zhang Han of the risk he would take while exploring that sect. He must be careful. "Let's go," said Wang Zanping after he licked his dry lips, taking the lead to go right ahead. They began to run fast forward. 10 minutes later, crack, a loud noise seemed to come from all directions. What happened? Tannen was trembling. When he looked up at the sky and found a 10-feet-long lightning, Tannen couldn't help cursing. "Don't scare me. Why is such a small thunder so loud?" Wang Zanping was thinking about the same thing. All three of them looked up at the sky, when they saw the thunder coming into their range of Zhang Han's soul sense. Swish. Zhang Han's face slightly changed as he put on that green robe immediately. It was no longer a normal thunder, but a cultivator-made thunder. The green lightning was T-wood thunder. "Okay, I won't play with you." Zhang Han put on the green robe. That lightning kept rushing towards Zhang Han. Bang! It landed on Zhang Han. The robe didn't absorb any thunder energy, and even the golden armor only resisted 50% of it. Zhang Han's whole body was numbed by the rest. 50% thunder energy. At the same time, a strong destructive force began to shuttle through Zhang Han's body, and Zhang Han's spiritual force kept fighting against the energy inside a T-wood thunder. But the lightning had the same vitality as the woods, and it kept growing after being broken. Therefore, Zhang Han's paralysis lasted a long time. 2 minutes later, Zhang Han dispelled the numbness. But what he didn't notice was that a little invisible light green thunder penetrated his soul sense and was absorbed by the clouds above in an instant. Woo! Zhang Han took a deep breath. When he was about to move on, he heard Tannen screaming. When Tannen was retreating as fast as he could, Zhang Han again used his ghostly eyes. He saw a figure in the back of Tannen's position just then, who was holding a kitchen knife in his right hand and wanted to wave it. 50 meters behind the man, a fat man with a frying shovel went straight to Zhang Han. "These are really servants' clothes." Zhang Han's lips twitched. "Stop." Zhang Han waved his hand to activate the King Ming steel, and the two local souls that disappeared. Then the three of them went on. That time around, they were all dressed in robes, so no lightning fell. After another 20 minutes, they finally arrived at that weird place mentioned by Wang Zanping. That was a mountain with a large area and a high altitude. There were lots of residential areas at the foot of the mountain. In that place, Zhang Han's soul sense could only extend to 300 meters, and it couldn't scan the houses. "Let's explore the houses," Zhang Han said. "Okay. Let's have a look at the nearest 3 rows of houses. We can help each other in case there are any incidents. It's too large here, and it will take a long time to explore all the houses," Tannen said after taking a glance at the houses. Time was limited, and they couldn't stay there for too long. Zhang Han nodded in favor of Lieutenant's idea. Then they began to explore those ancient houses one by one. Zhang Han went into a house and found that, as Wang Zanping said, there were only simple tables and chairs in it. The room was spotless, as if it had just been cleaned. On the other side there was a wooden bed, with 5 clothes neatly placed on its edge. It seemed that there were 5 people living there. Zhang Han found nothing special in that room, so he walked towards the next one. When he walked out, he saw Wang Zanping and Lieutenant. They were shaking their heads to show that they had found nothing, either. So the 3 began to explore houses closer to the center of the residential area very quickly. They again found nothing. In the middle of the residential area there was a stone road circling upward. "Let's go up the mountain and have a look," Zhang Han said. They went all the way up to the mountainside and found that the trees on the side of the road had been changed into red bamboo. Those bamboos looked ordinary. It was empty there, but all of a sudden, swish, both Wang Zanping and Lieutenant had widened their eyes. Looking to the right, they found that there were hundreds of people in the bamboo forest, chopping bamboo with wood knives. "This is what happened in the past," Zhang Han explained. "In other words, it's like a mirage after the dislocation of time. It's a little scary to see it all of a sudden." Lieutenant slowly shook his head and exclaimed, "It's worthy of being close to an A-level relic, which is so shocking." "Fortunately, it's not particularly dangerous here," said Wang Zanping. He felt that as long as he found the rule of lightning and learned to avoid them, the risk would be much lower there. This is supposed to be a relatively peripheral place. Zhang Han slightly shook his head, feeling something unusual there. Because he sensed a spirit treasure at the 5th level or above that he had speculated on before. It was that mountain. The whole mountain was a treasure. Although Zhang Han liked that treasure, he couldn't take it away. They continued to walk up and found that there were also lots of buildings around the mountainside. The buildings there were all single villas with small courtyards, and there were places for practicing before and after the houses. "Let's go have a look," Zhang Han said. They began to explore villa by villa. Han, I found a treasure." 10 minutes later, Wang Zanping shouted. Whoosh! Zhang Han and Lieutenant quickly appeared at the intersection, only to see Wang Zanping's right hand calmly lying on a palm-sized brown stone. According to its energy, it was a heaven-grade treasure. Neither Lieutenant nor Wang Zanping knew what it was. Zhang Han looked at the stone carefully and then recognized it. It's a piece of brown wind stone, which helps to strengthen arrays. It can also be used as the core of an array for several times. Array stone. Wang Zanping looked at the stone carefully and then gave it to Zhang Han. Master Wang, you can take it since you found it. If I wanted it, I'd give you another treasure at the same level in exchange for it." Zhang Han slightly shook his head. In normal social occasions, Zhang Han didn't mind the act of giving each other treasures. But when he was in the relics, he always abode by the rules and didn't take advantage of anyone. Okay. Wang Zanping took back the stone and put it in his pocket. He had no other way to store it because he couldn't put anything into his mountains and rivers flag while in that relic. "Then, shall we continue exploring?" Lieutenant felt excited. He was sure that the second treasure would follow the first one. 10 minutes later, as expected, he heard Lieutenant laughing. "Here's a crystal stone," Lieutenant shouted. A few minutes later, Wang Zanping announced, "Here is a crystal stone, too." As for Zhang Han, there were 5 crystal stones and 2 stone treasures hanging around his waist. He even found several bottles of pills. The bottles were in good condition, but the pills in them had disappeared. The pill bottles were ordinary, and Zhang Han didn't take them away. It seemed that only some stone treasures were left there, while there were almost no other things. It took them an hour to explore the whole area. They found a lot of things. That made Zhang Han a little curious. Maybe there would a larger harvest at the top of the mountain. So the 3 of them kept going up. They went through several mountainside mansions, and they again got several low-grade crystal stones. Then the 3 crossed a cloud to the top of the mountain. They were stunned by the scene. There was a big hall on the top of the mountain. In the most central place, there was a palace with the largest area, and they faced the back wall of the palace. They realized that what they had just covered was the back of the mountain. Woohoo! As soon as they entered the palace area, a noise was heard from afar. What's up? How many people are there? Both Wang Zanping and Tanan's face changed. It's also a record of what happened in the past. Zhang Han looked to the right and said, "We can continue to search for treasure." So they began to search for treasures in the houses of the palace from the outside. They have gained a lot more that time in comparison to the previous expedition. When they went to the main hall and passed by the back of it, swish, 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 they saw 8 challenge arenas in the vast square behind the main hall, with more than 1,000 people standing next to them. They also saw people fighting on the challenge arena and a dozen men standing on the small platform at the back of the challenge arena. Those things seemed to be actually happening, not memories of the past. Even the voices and expressions of those people were highly detailed, but none of them could see the 3 strangers. Is it a competition? Tanan was surprised. It was the first time for him to explore a B-level relic, and what he saw was completely beyond his understanding. Humphrey? Tanan felt something strange and turned his gaze at a disciple fighting on the arena. Wang Zanping, looking at another arena, was in a daze. Even Zhang Han couldn't help but look at the first challenge arena. His thoughts were following the rhythm of the competition. All of a sudden, Zhang Han narrowed his eyes in astonishment. Shock. He woke up Wang Zanping and Tanan with his soul sense. "Don't look at them, or you lose your soul here," Zhang Han said seriously. Hiss. His 2 friends gasped in fear. They thought they were just a little distracted, but the truth was they had almost been killed. If Zhang Han hadn't awakened them, they would have. It was frightening. Without Zhang Han, they would be lost there. The relic is really dangerous. They wiped their cold sweat. "Let's go to the main hall." Zhang Han took the lead to walk forward. He ignored all the disciples' images he encountered and went through them directly. The main hall covered a large area with many rooms. Zhang Han stopped in the hall, looked at the murals on the wall, and waved Wang Zanping and Tanan to search for treasures. 2 hours later, the 2 men gained a lot. Most were crystal stones and a few were stone treasures, which were all at the 3rd level. I found a storage bracelet, which can be used in the relic to store things. When we get out of here, you 2 can choose from them first, and I will take the rest back, said Tanan. Good idea. Wang Zanping nodded and put many treasures into the storage bracelet. At the time, Zhang Han turned around and left the main hall in silence. He looked up and saw 3 big characters above the main hall's gate. Shadow Bamboo Peak. Is it a sect? Tanan murmured. This is just one of the 18 branch sects of the Heavenly Thunder sect. Half of the time has passed, and we'd better go to the main sect of the Heavenly Thunder sect. It will take us 3 hours to get there, Zhang Han replied. That relic surprised him. He didn't expect to see a giant ancient sect there. Zhang Han was sure that they were currently in the Saint Warrior planet. Chapter 552, A Coincidence. The Heavenly Thunder sect was an ancient sect. The sect was good at teaching lightning-related skills and methods, and it was divided into inner sect and outer sect. The outer sect was again divided into 18 branch sects, and their disciples were not acknowledged by the inner sect of Heavenly Thunder sect. The chiefs and elders from the 18 branch sects were in charge of teaching their disciples, and the talented disciples would be recommended to the inner sect. The disciples learn many kinds of skills, including alchemy, weapons refining, animal training, etc. But their forte was the skill to control lightning. When the outer sect disciples reached the innateness stage, they would get a chance to enter the inner sect. It was a competition of 18 branch sects held every 5 years. All the innateness stage members of the outer sect would fight for the 1,000 opportunities to become inner sect disciples. The inner sect disciples were at least at the innateness stage, and they weren't allowed to leave the mountain before they reached the elixir stage. Yuan Ying masters were mainstays of the sect, and most of the elders were at the god transformation stage. As for Yi, the chief of the Heavenly Thunder sect, he was at the integration stage. It could be called a large sect even in the cultivation world. The information was obtained by Zhang Han from the mural on the wall, which recorded all kinds of deeds of the Heavenly Thunder sect, from its establishment to its development. At the beginning, Yi established the Heavenly Thunder sect with 3 disciples and their followers. After more than 10 years of development, the sect had taken shape. After 60 years of development, the Heavenly Thunder sect became an influential force. After 70 years, there were more than 10,000 disciples and more than 100 elders at the God transformation stage in the sect. There were thousands of elders in the period of deification. That honor was recorded on the wall as spreading for hundreds of years. However, such a powerful sect gradually declined with the passage of time. The Heavenly Thunder sect no longer existed, only leaving that ancient relic for them to explore. Since there were so many treasures in the outer sect, Zhang Han wondered what he would find at the inner sect. However, opportunities were often accompanied by crises. In this ancestral sect site, even Zhang Han began to be cautious. "Wait, have you heard something?" Zhang suddenly stopped and said in confusion, "I heard thunder." "Yes, the thunder came from that direction." Wang Zanping pointed to the right, and his face was pale. They turned around and saw another lightning following the first one. "Who is he? How can he challenge the lightning? Shall we go to have a look?" Zhang said, feeling frightened. Zhang Han nodded and took the lead to approach that man. It was a long distance, but Zhang Han's speed was very fast. About 10 minutes later, they reached their destination. A man in green was holding a palm-sized big ball. There was a flash of lightning in the sphere, and he was obviously absorbing the thunder to improve his treasure. However, what a pity, it would have become a divine-level treasure. Zhang Han shook his head and stopped with Wang Zanping and Zhang. Although the ball in the man's hand was a 3rd-stage spirit treasure, it was much closer to the 4th stage in terms of quality. He could have waited for some refining materials to upgrade the treasure, but when he saw the thunder in the area, he wanted to take the opportunity to absorb some of them. It was a good idea, but the reality was cruel. At the moment he couldn't stop even if he wanted to. When Zhang was about to ask him, a blast came from all directions, and they saw a 1,000 feet long T-wood thunder falling towards that man. No! The man in green wanted to withdraw his treasure, but he failed to store it in his space ring. At that critical moment, he saw that the T-wood thunder was about to fall, and quickly threw his treasure forward to block it. However, crack! There was a crack in the ball made by the T-wood thunder. It was like a butterfly effect. Crack! The second crack appeared. Then, the third, the fourth, soon after the 5th crack. Bang! A blast came out, and dozens of lightnings stored in the ball began attacking the man in blue from all directions. He was stunned with a pale face. The lightning soon fell down. Hiss! The thunder is so terrible. Fortunately, we found these clothes in time, or the consequences would have been unimaginable. Lei Tannen gasped in fear. That man in green was soon killed by the lightning. Let's go. Zhang Han looked at that direction calmly and took the lead to leave. When he entered the relic, he was in the deep forest, under the rolling black clouds, unable to find the direction. Since he had found the position of the Heavenly Thunder sect's main sect, he could just go there. They kept walking forward. They didn't see any creatures along the way. That beautiful place was a world without people, birds and animals. In the last relic, there were creatures like the fire soul. There were no living things in that relic. Zhang Han planned to reach the Heavenly Thunder sect's main sect within 3 hours. But it took them 5 hours to get there. Damn it. The 3 of them were at the top of a mountain, looking at the main sect from afar. Seeing the picture in front of him, Zhang gradually widened his eyes. This area is like large city. It's bigger than the South Island of Hong Kong. It's amazing. Yes, it's larger, and we only have 13 hours. Wang Zanping looked at the hourglass and shook his head. We can only explore a small part of this area in the 13 hours available. Let's go the first." Zhang Han sighed. Zhang Han still couldn't smell the treasure's fragrance with his treasure-sniffing nose. But when he arrived near the city, he found that the whole city was filled with the fragrance of treasures. Just like the Shadow Bamboo Peak, the whole sect was a treasure that couldn't be taken away by Zhang Han. After such a long time, only treasures could record the grand occasion of that sect. When Zhang Han approached the main sect, he saw a wall as high as 100 feet. The gate was open, but on both sides of the gate, there were two humanoid statues with animal heads with two horns. They held two huge forks respectively and seemed to be staring at Zhang Han fiercely. "Are they alive and dead? Why do I see the right one's eyes blinking?" Zhang suddenly asked. He was frightened. It was so scary. "I also saw its eyes blink. Han, what's the reason?" Wang Zanping stood still and he felt cold. "They are just two statues of monsters, as long as you stop looking into their eyes." Zhang Han took a glance at the statues and took the lead to enter the city. Wu, Wang Zanping and Zhang looked at each other and sighed with relief. Then they hurried to catch up with Zhang Han. Outside the gate, they saw that the city was empty and there was a sense of stillness. But when they stepped into it, clatter, they heard all kinds of noise. In the front of the buildings on both sides of the street, there were many people coming and going, as well as stalls, and all kinds of snacks, weapons shops, tea houses, restaurants, and even brothels. That was like an ancient picture. Attention! Zhang Han warned Zhang and Wang Zanping. Both of his friends were attracted by the scene again and even wanted to have a drink in one of the restaurants. Zhang Han's words were like cold water that awakened them. They were shocked and suddenly realized what had happened. It was just like a real city. "Zhang Han, shall we go to the houses on both sides?" Zhang looked at both sides of the road and reminded Zhang Han. "Let's go inside first." Zhang Han replied, and the red light in his eyes gradually faded. He had just opened his ghost eyes and found that it was a desolate place without human beings. Those were just the outskirts of the city and the chance of finding spirit treasures was not great. Besides, Zhang Han always felt that someone was looking at him from the empty houses on both sides of the street. He knew that if he entered the house, he would be attacked. He decided to go to the main sect of the Heavenly Thunder sect directly. Their time was limited after all. They walked on for about an hour. Suddenly, Zhang Han stopped and looked at the street on the right, where a man in black was lying. Judging from his clothes, it was a man who was exploring the relic. Zhang Han recognized that he was a disciple from another sect who followed Gaik Singkong. Why was he killed here? Zhang frowned. That man was lying in the middle of the road, but the people who lived in the memory of history didn't seem to see him. Only Zhang Han, Zhang and Wang Zanping saw his body. Next to his body was a big wooden card with a line of words written on it. "If you see this wooden card, from here on, don't explore the houses on both sides. Go inside to find the main sect." That was a warning. This proved that Zhang Han's premonition was right. There was danger in the houses on both sides of the street. Zhang Han thought about it and then nodded. "Let's go forward." "Okay." Wang Zanping and Zhang nodded. They would follow Zhang Han wherever he went. If they hadn't met Zhang Han, who was knowledgeable, they would have been killed in that city or even in the Shadow Bamboo Peak just then. As experienced martial artists, they didn't want to risk their lives. That was why Wang Zanping just checked several houses at the foot of Shadow Bamboo Peak and soon left the place. If they were in the jungle, they wouldn't be in any danger. But in that city, they weren't so confident. There was still a black cloud in the sky, but it could be seen faintly that the black cloud in the far front side was constantly surging, and even a few light green thunders were falling. Obviously, it was the center of the city, the location of the main sect. They walked forward. The houses on both sides of the road were getting more and more high-end, and even some small palaces could be seen occasionally. Finally, the three arrived at a different place. The buildings at the front suddenly disappeared, but what came into view was a massive lake. The water in the lake was constantly turning, and there was a big island in the middle of the lake. There were many buildings on the island, and they saw an enormous palace in the innermost side. The 3 words above the palace gate could be seen clearly: Heavenly Thunder Sect. Looking at both sides, they couldn't see the end of the lake at all, because there was a light mist on the lake in the distance. In other words, there was a light fog all over the lake. When they looked at the distance, the fog overlapped and they couldn't see clearly. Hundreds of meters to the left, a small group of people stood on the bank, which seemed to be facing the main gate of the Heavenly Thunder Sect. Zhang Han saw 6 bridges made of long chains, on which there were stone slabs, with a distance of nearly 10 meters between every 2 stone slabs. Such a distance would be covered by a martial artist's step. Zhang Han and his friends walked towards that group of people. That group of 11 men was led by Gai Xingkong, and Zhang Han even saw Director Bai among them. They seemed to be talking about something. There were 2 people standing by the bridge, looking serious, as if crossing the bridge required great courage. Before they could take any actions, Gai Xingkong turned around and shouted, "Han!" He burst out laughing. "You are finally here. I thought you were 3 images like them. We came from Shadow Bamboo Peak." Zhang Han nodded and replied. According to the warning sign, he realized that Gai Xingkong or another person should have the map of the area. Just as Zhang Han expected, Gai Xingkong was confused but soon replied, "Shadow Bamboo Peak is far from here, as the most remote one among the 18 outer sects, that should be located at the edge of this relic. I'm lucky and was sent to Kilong Peak directly, near the main sect." Swish. Zhang Han's lips twitched. "What's the situation? Every time I explore the ruins, how can I always be in the edge area? Is it really just a coincidence? I only found some heaven-grade treasures in Kilong Peak, quite a lot, but of no use to me, so I came to the main city early." There was light green thunder in the houses on both sides of the street, and the degree of the attack seemed to have something to do with the level of the house, but there was no treasure in it. When I came here to go to the main sect of the Heavenly Thunder Sect, I found these long bridges. There are more than 1,000 flagstones on the bridge. Every time you step on a piece of stone, you will be attacked by a light green thunder, which can't be resisted or destroyed. Otherwise, the suction of the slate will gradually strengthen, so that you can no longer move forward. Gai Xingkong told Zhang Han his experience. "Only by fighting the thunder with our flesh can we go further. The power of the lightning here is not so terrible, and I can take a rest on the slate for 2 minutes after each attack." I tried 3 times, and covered 500 slates, 570 slates, and 660 slates respectively. If I try again several times, I can get into it. Unfortunately, there isn't much time. Gai Xingkong forced to smile. What a pity that he could only look at the main sect. Yes, Grandmaster Gai is also accomplished in the physical aspect, unlike me. Director Bai shook his head helplessly, and said, "I could only reach the 310th flagstones with all my strength. Not bad. I just reached the 160th stone. I covered more than 400 stones, but I can't enter the main sect before the relic is closed. Only Grandmaster Gai is able to enter it." "Yes, Grandmaster Gai, would you like to try again? We all believe in you." The 2 men standing in front of the chain bridge asked. One of them was at the Grandmaster middle stage, and the other was at the last stage. They were about to have a try. Gai Xingkong shook his hand and said, "Try it as you like, there are 6 bridges and we can choose the others." "Okay." They replied and then jumped onto the first stone. It seemed that they were going to have a competition. Crack. At the moment when they stepped on the stone slab, a 100 feet long T-wood thunder hit them directly. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The 2 men shivered on the slate, which lasted for 2 seconds. Then they stepped onto the second stone slab to meet the new lightning. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. In that way, they moved forward trembling. Gai Xingkong shook his head and commented, "The size of the lightning changes according to our strength. While my lightning is 300 feet in length, their lightning is just 100 feet or 200 feet in length. In the beginning, the attack power of lightning wasn't strong, but it would gradually improve until it is hard for us to bear. I see. Zhang Han nodded while looking at the two men carefully. They reached the 170th and 205th stone respectively, and then retreated in a hurry. Sitting at the edge of the bank, they complained, "We were numbed by the lightning. Han, shall we go together?" Gai Xingkong was excited. He wanted to compete with Zhang Han in that aspect. Okay. Zhang Han nodded calmly. Gai Xingkong's followers began cheering for him. They admired Zhang Han, but they didn't believe that Zhang Han could defeat Gai Xingkong. Grandmaster Zhang, although you are powerful, you may not win against Grandmaster Gai on the Lightning Bridge. Yes, Gai Xingkong reached the 700th stone with his secret methods. It's Grandmaster Gai's fourth try, and I'm sure he will break the former record. Grandmaster Zhang, you can be to have surpassed Grandmaster Gai if you reach the 500th stone, but it will be too difficult for you. Everyone was discussing. All of them were in favor of Gai Xingkong. Zhang Han was not angry because he didn't know the competition results, either, but he was sure that he could reach the 500th stone. Let me have a try. Lieutenant said excitedly, regarding the exploration as a game. I'll go with you, Wang Zanping said. They soon occupied 4 of the 6 bridges. The others thought about it and gave up. They would be embarrassed if they just covered a few stones in front of the 2 grandmasters. Let's go. Gai Xingkong laughed and took the lead to step onto the stone. Zhang Han and the other 2 followed him closely, stepping into the stone slab of their own bridge. Crack. A 300 feet long lightning appeared above Gai Xingkong. Crack. A 200 feet long lightning appeared above Lieutenant. Crack. Above Wang Zanping there was another 200 feet long lightning. Kaboom. On the right side, the clear thunder turned into a dull and deafening sound. It seemed to be blowing in the ear, which made people dizzy in an instant. Then, a burning light lit up the whole city. In the next second, the other martial artists were stunned when they were able to see the scene closely. Damn it, what's this? They saw a 10,000 feet long lightning forming above Zhang Han. Looking at such a giant T-wood thunder, Zhang Han's eyes and mouth were twitching. Chapter 553, Enjoying the Lightning. Even Gai Xingkong, Lieutenant and Wang Zanping on the chain bridge were shocked. What's going on? They were startled because the lightning attacking them was nothing compared with Zhang Han's giant lightning. When they saw the 300 feet long lightning attacking Gai Xingkong before, they realized that the length of lightning was related to their strength. At the moment, they denied the idea. Zhang Han's lightning was at least 20 times the length of Lieutenant's, but Zhang Han Yang's strength couldn't be 20 times better than Lieutenant's. So, what determines the length of the lightning? Talent? Hiss. They couldn't help gasping in astonishment. It's amazing. Zhang Han Yang is not an ordinary martial artist. 10,000 feet in length, it's too exaggerated. While Grandmaster Gai's lightning is 300 feet in length, Zhang Han Yang's lightning is 10,000 feet long. How can there be such a large gap between their strengths? If I were on the bridge now, I would retreat after 2 or 3 stones. I wonder how many stones will Zhang Han Yang cover? It is even more difficult for him to bear such a terrifying lightning. Bang! 4 lightning rays landed on Zhang Han and his friends respectively. Zhang Han was thinking about it. In terms of talent, Zhang Han had a 10 inches danshan and was sure to meet the strongest lightning. He wondered how powerful the T-wood thunder could be. When Zhang Han was looking at the lightning seriously, it hit his chest. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Zhang Han was immediately numbed by that lightning. Although he had completely lost the feeling below his neck, Zhang Han kept observing the thunder carefully and found most of its energy was absorbed by the stone on the bridge. It was the lightning itself creating chaos in Zhang Han's body and meridians rather than its energy. In the next moment, bang! When the intensity of the T-wood thunder reached a certain level, they found a vent and rushed into Zhang Han's soul sense sea. At that moment, in the clouds above the soul sense sea, a thunderbolt flickered. The thunderbolt seemed to be very happy, absorbing the incoming attributes directly, and then its color became light green. The T-wood thunder was eaten by the clouds above my soul sense sea. Zhang Han was stunned and continued to observe, only to find that the thunder retreated into the clouds after the strong light broke out. But at the edge of the cloud, a stream of energy was converging, forming a new cloud. Hiss! Zhang Han was surprised and overjoyed. It's my opportunity. After the first lightning strike, Zhang Han stood in place for 5 seconds before his body regained its mobility. The second lightning attacked him as soon as he stepped onto the second stone. In terms of energy, the new lightning was the same as the former one, therefore, Zhang Han thought it might be the largest lightning on the bridge. The attribute energy of the second lightning was also absorbed by the thunder in the cloud, and then another cloud appeared at the edge of the cloud. Zhang Han found the area of his soul sense sea larger than before and his soul sense grew stronger. Although a single lightning didn't have a great impact, if all the lightning energy on the 1,000 stone slabs were absorbed, it would give Zhang Han a terrifying amount of energy. What a pity that Zhang Han's body was ordinary. Looking at his numb hands, Zhang Han murmured to himself, I will refine my body after reaching the innateness stage. I used to focus on accelerating my speed and ignored the method to refine my body. It was one of the reasons why I was killed by my lightning punishment. This time, I must learn a body refining method. Luckily, I'm in the Saint Warrior plane, otherwise the relic would be a little difficult for me. Zhang Han relaxed for several seconds and then stepped onto the third stone. Gai Xinkong, Wang Zanping and Lutanen were still on the first stone. They looked at each other. Gai Xinkong, Wang Zanping, Lutanen. They were all confused because they had just recovered from the numbness. How could he move so fast onto the third stone? How fast is he? Is his body as strong as Gai Xinkong's? Is it true? He soon recovered from the giant lightning's attack and was still 3 times faster than Grandmaster Gai. Everyone on the back was stunned. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they would have thought it was false. Woo! Lutanen forced to smile when he saw Zhang Han leave the third stone. Han is truly fathomless. Hurry up, we must catch up with him. The 3 of them stepped onto the second stone at the same time. They didn't notice that the lightning above their heads had become smaller. It may have been because Zhang Han's lightning was too dazzling. At the same time, people on the shore were also a little surprised by the speed. However, how many tablets can he hold on to? The question came to them. I think it's like running for a long time. He tried too hard at the beginning and it will be hard for him to keep this speed. Therefore, he might cover less and less distance with each step. I guess Zhang Han Yang won't reach the 500th stone this time, and he may stop at the 450th stone. I don't agree with you. His speed shows that he has a strong ability to resist lightning, and thus he may be able to reach the 600th stone. Everyone was making their own guesses, but they didn't notice at all that the images of the people who had lived there on the street behind them had turned their gazes to Zhang Han in astonishment. If Zhang Han had seen it, he would have guessed that it was the embodiment of the human nature of that spirit treasure. Bang! Bang! Zhang Han began to enjoy the lightning. Although he felt numb and a little pain, the pleasure of his soul sense promotion was beyond words. Gradually, Lutanen, Gai Xinkong and Wang Zanping didn't look at their own direction. When the lightning fell, they were all watching Zhang Han. When their body was no longer numb, they stepped on the next slate. That way, Zhang Han would become everyone's focus. 50, 70, 100, 200. Under everyone's gazes, Zhang Han had covered 500 stones. Wow, he broke Grandmaster Gai's record. And his lightning is much more terrifying than Grandmaster Gai's. It's amazing. Everyone on the shore was stunned. They had no idea that Zhang Han Yang could rush in like that. Gradually, Zhang Han reached the 600th slate. There was another exclamation on the shore. Then he reached the 700th slate. Everyone was speechless. He continued to step onto the 800th slate. He heard many people gasping in shock. He soon reached the 900th slate. Everyone was stunned. When he stepped onto their 1000th slate, he succeeded. Great. Marvelous. People on the shore began to praise and cheer Zhang Han. Even Gai Xingkong was smiling at him. He admitted that the young man was better than him. It's wonderful that his son has grown to be a strong man. Everyone present was sighing with emotion. All of a sudden, they widely opened their eyes. Ah? Question mark. What is he doing? Is he addicted to being hit by lightning? Zhang Han stood on the 1000th slate and didn't press forward. There was a new lightning above him. The thunder bridge seemed to have been provoked, and it accelerated at the speed of lightning. Crack, crack, crack. The lightning rays began attacking Zhang Han one after the other. All the other martial artists were astonished. Even the other three men on the bridge, including Gai Xingkong, were stunned. What is he doing? The three of them were still moving forward, reaching the 400th stone slab. The thunder and lightning flashed ahead, but the sky was clear above them. They could only look at Zhang Han's direction in confusion. 100, 200, 300. They soon gave up counting how many lightning rays Zhang Han had absorbed. The number might be 1000. At the end, the light of the lightning was much dimmed. Is Zhang Han going to run out of lightning? Zhang joked. Then he looked up at the sky in confusion. Where is my lightning? Where is the lightning? My lightning is missing. Wang Zanping echoed. All the lightning, they are going to hit him. Gai Xingkong wanted to laugh. They had been troubled by those bridges and even planned to give up exploring the Heavenly Thunder sect. But Zhang Han had defeated those bridges alone. Gai Xingkong felt as if he were dreaming. However, when the lightning disappeared, everyone could cross the bridge without any obstruction. Gai Xingkong was excited and he waited for a while on the bridge with Wang Zanping and Zhang. When the last lightning disappeared, all the onlookers turned their gazes at Zhang Han. How does it feel to be struck by lightning? Did it feel comfortable? Yes, Zhang Han felt comfortable. He was surprised to find that there were 2000 more clouds above his soul sense sea, and the size of the sea had expanded a little. At the same time, he found it harder to suppress the lightning in the clouds. Crack! A green lightning flashed across the clouds above the soul sense sea. Would thunder. Clatter. Zhang Han's eyes brightened suddenly, and lightning flashed through his pupils. His great soul sense power swept away in all directions. 1 mile, 2 miles. His spiritual sense energy was spreading like a hurricane. 5 miles, 6 miles. In the end, it could extend up to 10 miles. The thunder in the cloud couldn't be used by Zhang Han, but his soul sense had integrated the powerful vitality of the T-wood thunder, and it had been recovering himself in the process of being used. Woo! Zhang Han took a deep breath after withdrawing his soul sense. We can cross the bridge. Gai Xingkong turned around to announce the good news. The lightning on the bridge is gone. We can also cross the bridge. Zhang Han Yang resisted all those lightnings alone. He's such a good man. Everyone was praising Zhang Han. Without the threat of lightning, the people on the iron chain bridge was unimpeded. While the three men on the bridge kept moving forward quickly, the other martial artists also stepped on the bridge. They soon approached Zhang Han. Wang Zanping asked in confusion, Han, what happened just now? Could you please tell us? Zhang and Gai Xingkong turned their gazes at Zhang Han. Well, Zhang Han knew about it for 2 seconds and then replied, I was cultivating just now. You were cultivating? The three men were even more shocked. Can being hit by thunder help in cultivating? While they were talking, the following martial artists soon approached them. They began cheering for Zhang Han. Zhang Han was amused by them. At the moment, however, they faced a more serious problem. the main sect of the Heavenly Thunder sect. So after a discussion, they decided to enter the main sect together. If it was safer, they would begin exploring it separately. In fact, Zhang Han didn't care much about the following exploration. He had received the Teawood Thunder, though its quality was not particularly good. In fact, all kinds of Teawood Thunder could bring great benefits to Zhang Han, and that attempt proved that his soul sense could integrate and absorb the original energy of lightning. That opened a new chapter for his cultivation. The place where they stood was an island with a large area. In front of the iron chain bridge was the entrance of a large palace. After crossing the palace, they saw many buildings inside, all of which were ancient houses, with some distance between each other. It seemed to be a cultivation place for inner sect disciples. There were countless houses on the island. We can search some houses on the edge and check the occurrence probability of treasures in this area. Of course, there may be good treasures, but there are too many houses here, and we don't have enough time to explore all of them. Most of our time should be spent on the innermost palace. Gaik Sinkong suggested after looking at that area carefully. The other martial artists nodded and began exploring some houses. In the first house, some treasures were found. I found 2 heaven-grade gems and 5 earth-grade gems. I got 3 heaven-grade gems and 7 earth-grade gems. Han, my house is amazing. There are 8 heaven-grade gems and 16 earth-grade gems. Wang Zanping was so excited. I only have 1 less earth-grade gem than you. Tanan smiled. It was a great harvest. Everyone was exploring happily. All the treasures they found that could be stored in a kind of space treasure they found in the relic, which was much more convenient, but only 5 of the 20 martial artists present had that kind of space treasure. Everyone there was familiar with each other and could borrow the space treasure. Even Gaik Sinkong couldn't help prolonging the time of the treasure hunt. After all, what he could see and get was the real treasure. They searched the area for 2 hours, but it was just the tip of the iceberg for the entire residential area. We only have 2 hours. Han and I decided to go to the main hall. You can go with us or stay here together. Gaik Sinkong notified them. I'll go with you. I'll go, too. A total of 19 people were present, 15 of whom planned to follow Zhang Han and Gaik Sinkong, while the other 2 stayed there. They didn't know that from the moment they chose to stay, they would stay there forever. Chapter 554, Returning Fully Loaded. This was a vast residential area, seemingly quiet and peaceful. But this was the main sect of the Heavenly Thunder sect, and no one dared to relax their vigilance. There could be no real peace here. Those poor people were blinded by their immediate interests. After the explorers entered the main sect, they crossed the residential area, where there were several large squares. At this time, they were hundreds of meters away from the main palace. The main palace was large and nearly 100 feet high. After entering the main palace, they saw a huge hall. There were 2 circular corridors on the left and right. After walking into the hall, they found that there were some alchemy venues on the first floor, but each room was empty, with no furnace or other materials. There were still many alchemy rooms on the second and third floor, and the explorers found nothing there. On the third, fourth, and fifth floors, there were pavilions storing cultivating methods recorded on jade slips. Unfortunately, there were only 2 cabinets filled with broken jade slips. Then the explorers went upstairs and into an arms cache. They still found nothing special there. They realized that the main palace was not the sect chief's living room, but a functional palace. There were still several floors above, but at the stairway entrance, Zhang Han shook his head and said, "We'd better stop here and explore in that direction." Zhang Han pointed to the back of the main palace. Upon hearing Zhang Han's words, the other martial artists all gave up the idea of going upstairs, which was a waste of time. So they went back to the first floor, through the back door of the main hall, and saw an amazing scene. There were several squares on both sides, surrounded by lots of buildings. The buildings here were much better than the ones they had just passed by. This reflected the hierarchical system of the Heavenly Thunder sect. That was, excellent disciples could enjoy better living conditions and resources. If this method was used properly, it could stimulate the disciples' enthusiasm for winning. After a while, in front of them appeared a magnificent building, like an enlarged palace. It was amazing to the explorers. They crossed the wide square to the main complex. This should be the residence of the sect elders. Director Bai said after observation. Let's be careful and explore the area nearby. There are 2 hours left, which should be enough time, said Ge Xinkong in a deep voice. The martial artists formed 5 small teams to explore on both sides. This time, they found some treasures. Zhang Han was exploring a residence with Wang Zanping, Lieutenant, and Director Bai. They got something useful in an alchemy room. Crystal brittle stone, these are enough for Little Hai to snack on. Zhang Han smiled and picked up nearly 100 second-level crystal brittle stones scattered on the ground. There was nothing in this alchemy room, except these scattered stones. When Zhang Han was about to leave, suddenly he smelled a fragrance. Zhang Han stopped, looked up, and fixed his eyes on the middle of the roof. There was something light green there. It was a plant spirit treasure. Zhang Han looked at it carefully and then realized what it was. It's a power grass. Zhang Han smiled. The power grass in front of him was like a needle. Although it was hard to see it clearly, such a small power grass could greatly enhance the strength of cultivators. Not to mention that this power grass had reached the 4th level, which was of great use today. As for Zhao Feng, Ahu, and Elder Meng, who had been learning different methods specially chosen for them, such as Big Dark Devil Shadow, they got their strength enhanced through practicing constantly instead of taking a shortcut. When the crystal stone vein on the mountain was formed later, their cultivation speed would be greatly improved. But the cultivation way of spirit beasts was very different from that of human beings. Before Dai and Little Hai advanced in the innateness stage and awoke some of their gifted supernatural power, they relied on other things such as medicinal pellets to cultivate, so Zhang Han usually gave such opportunities to Dai and Little Hai. Zhang Han made a small hand with his spiritual sense mind trick, took down power grass and put it in Wang Zanping's space bracelet. In this way, the group of martial artists explored for nearly an hour. Everyone had gained a lot. They were satisfied with this relic. As luck came after hardship, when they first came in, they suffered a lot from the lightning before getting the lightning protecting gown, and then were attacked by those local souls. When they finally survived and came to the main city, they were blocked by the thundering iron bridge. They all knew that if Zhang Han hadn't helped them, they wouldn't have had so many gains. Some of the Grand Masters here who were close to Ge Xinkong were very heroic. One of them suggested, "I want to give half of my treasures to Grand Master Zhang." Everyone agreed with him. After discussion, they all took out 30% of the treasure they had found in the relic. There were 2 martial artists who didn't approve of it, but they didn't have space magic weapons, so most of their treasures were held by their temporary teammates. Just when people wanted to continue exploring, hiss. Zhang Han sniffed. Just like before, he couldn't sense the interior of the room. As for the yard and the road, there was no smell of treasures. 1 mile, 2 miles, there was no special smell in 9 miles. However, when Zhang Han explored the 10th mile, clatter, he smelled a very strong fragrance of treasure. This is the smell of crystal stone. It's so fragrant that it should be at the 5th level. Zhang Han's eyes lit up. There were many kinds of crystal stones, among which the common crystal stones without properties were usually used as a monetary equivalent, while the crystal stones with properties were relatively rare, and they had different values according to their grades. Zhang Han was so familiar with the smell of common crystal stone, so he knew that the crystal stone not far away had properties. Zhang Han was pleased with his discovery. All of a sudden, zoom, Zhang Han felt that a 100-foot-long black shadow flashed from the edge of his soul sense, which seemed to be able to devour the soul sense, and had bitten the edge of Zhang Han's soul sense. What's that? Zhang Han's eyes narrowed in surprise. because the black shadow made his heart beat faster. It's not easy to deal with. When Zhang Han was thinking about it, Wang Zanping called him. Zhang, come here, we'd better seize this rare opportunity and get as much treasure as we can. Okay, I'm coming. Zhang Han gave up on going to investigate that shadow. He continued to explore with the others. Time passed quickly, and all the explorers gathered on the street again. They were less than a kilometer away from the huge house, like a small palace in front of them. Half an hour, shall we go in and explore? Gai Xingkong looked at Zhang Han and asked. If there were only him and his men in the team, he would give orders directly as a team leader, but now he would discuss any ideas with Zhang Han. Because in this short period of contact, Gai Xingkong found that Zhang Han was really unfathomable, as if he would always have a trump card. It was shocking enough for Gai Xingkong to see Zhang Han deal with that iron bridge. Zhang Han was thinking about Gai Xingkong's suggestion. Then he replied, there is something I need in that direction, and I'll go take a look at the last minute. I found another thing frightening there, so you'd better not take the risk. He added, but if you want to go there now, I won't stop you. Of course, Zhang Han would not restrict their actions. He just wanted to explain to them the danger of this trip. However, since you have warned us of the danger there, we will certainly not disobey your suggestion. Director by force to smile, at least I won't take the risk. I'm satisfied with what I've got. Yes, Han, we'd better stay here and continue exploring the safe area. I advise you not to go ahead and take risks. Wang Zanping tried to persuade Zhang Han. It's true that if you force your way into the relic, you lose more than you gain, Gai Xingkong echoed. In his opinion, anything Zhang Han could call frightening had to be really frightening. I'm familiar with Zhang Han's style. Now that he's put forward this proposal, he must be certain of ensuring his own safety. After all, his beautiful wife and lovely daughter are waiting for him, Lieutenant said with a smile. But Zhang Han decided to take action at the last minute in order to protect the other explorers, which showed that he was not confident enough this time. Therefore, his friends tried to stop him. Hearing their words, Zhang Han shook his head and smiled. You're right, I'm not sure if I can defeat that thing over there, but I'm confident that I can snatch a treasure from it. For safety's sake, I'll try it in the last 30 seconds. Okay. Zhang Han's friends stopped trying to persuade him, but they were more curious about the thing that Zhang Han had mentioned. What kind of thing is so frightening? The explorers spent the rest of their time exploring some more houses and finally gathered outside the main residence. 1 minute. The explorers began to worry again. The main residential area was similar to an imperial city. The gate was open and they could see many houses in it. There was also a palace in the center, behind which was a large mountain. But they didn't know what Zhang Han could get from that place within 30 seconds. 50 seconds. 40 seconds. Zhang Han's friends were so nervous that they held their breath. 30 seconds. Gai Xingkong said suddenly. Whoosh. As soon as he finished, he saw Zhang Han's body turn into a light and rush inside the main residential area. At the same time, Zhang Han's strong soul sense spread out to explore the scope of 3 miles around. With the help of his treasure-sniffing nose, Zhang Han could smell the treasure from the mountain at the back of the palace. It was impossible to fly there, but Zhang Han's speed was incredible. Entering the palace, he found 2 rows of tent sculptures standing inside, and each of them was 8 meters in height. At the moment, when Zhang Han entered the palace, boom, 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 all the sculptures began to shake. Are they going to wake up? It was a pity that when they were shaking, Zhang Han had already crossed the palace and came to the small square behind it. After arriving at the end of the square, Zhang Han found that glittering crystal stone at the foot of the mountain. Heaven-see crystal stone? Zhang Han narrowed his eyes slightly, and then he was attracted by a huge stone behind the crystal. A huge stone? It was not a stone. It was just a raised point on the mountain, and there was a huge cave on both sides of it. Woo! 2 streams of gas were spewed out of the cave. which swallowed up a little of Zhang Han's spiritual sense energy. What's the gas stream? Wind? It was not because of the wind, which made Zhang Han's face a little stiff. He stood still. It took him 10 seconds to get from the gate, but he stood here for 10 seconds. In the 11th second, Zhang Han moved his hand and took the Heaven Sea Crystal Stone. Zhang Han flashed back without hesitation. His figure gradually faded at the same time, and finally was completely invisible. In this way, he safely crossed the palace where the sculpture rioted and returned to the square. He shouted in a hurry, "Hide! Hide from what?" Gai Xingkong and others subconsciously retreated at a high speed. The next moment, boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, they heard a deafening sound. Under everyone's gaze, that mountain began to move. Is that mountain alive? It looked like a landslide, but the explorers knew that there had to be something horrible there. What's that? When everyone was looking at that mountain in astonishment, they saw a huge yak stand up. That whole mountain was actually a lying yak, whose huge horns seemed to pierce the sky. Suddenly, its two big eyes opened. A dazzling light burst out, and there were countless flashes of lightning on the giant yak. Moo. The sound of yak shook the souls of the explorers. All the martial artists, including Zhang Han, stood still in a daze. Fortunately, at this critical moment, the white fog reappeared and covered them. After a while, the white fog dissipated and the explorers inside disappeared. Bang, 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 bang. Suddenly, more than 10 people appeared in the sky beside the relic of Mount He Snow and fell on the snow. More than 1,000 onlookers present were frightened by them. It's them, they've come out, Master. Zhao Feng rushed toward Zhang Han with his men. Grandfather. Gai Yulong followed them. Zhang Han sat up and shook his dizzy head. He was still in a state of shock. A thunder yak at the elixir stage. There are many treasures under the yak's body, but they are not something I can get right now. Zhang Han clapped the dust off his clothes and stood up. Master, are you all right? Zhao Feng asked. I'm fine. Zhang Han shook his head and found that it was dark. It was 7 o'clock in the evening. He put the power grass and Heaven Sea Crystal Stone into his space ring. At this time, Gai Xingkong and others also stood up. They began to talk about what they had just seen. The frightening being that Zhang Han mentioned is so scary. It took them a minute to calm down. Then they went to chat with Zhang Han, and gave 30% of their treasures to him. We used to have a party after exploring a relic. Would you like to join us tonight? Gai Xingkong invited Zhang Han. You're welcome to have fun with us. The others cheered. Thank you, but I have something to do. Zhang Han chuckled and shook his head. Ha ha ha. Okay, just go back to comfort your wife and daughter. We can gather again another day. Gai Xingkong laughed. They saw Zhang Han rush down the mountain with his men. Zhang Han got in his car parked at the roadside. He dialed Ziyan's number and immediately got through. Honey. He heard Ziyan's sweet voice along with Meng Meng's papa. Chapter 555, The Gai Family's Guest. The gentle voices of his wife and daughter turned into a warm breeze, relaxing Zhang Han's tired body. He had been nervous during the last minute in the relic, and now he was finally at ease. The elixir stage Thunder Yak was almost invincible, and it should be at the top of the food chain in the relic. Zhang Han was unable to defeat it now. He speculated that the Thunder Yak had swallowed the tea wood thunder a long time ago, but unconsciously released it when sleeping. Anyway, this expedition turned Zhang Han's 2,000 clouds into 4,000, increased his soul sense, and expanded the area of his soul sense sea and the cloud layer above it. This was good news, but it would be more difficult for Zhang Han to suppress the clouds that constantly wanted to gather together. Fortunately, Zhang Han was optimistic and even regarded it as a way of cultivation. He just needed to wait a year for the Thunder Yang wood to mature, and then he would advance to the innateness stage. In addition, Zhang Han was satisfied with the Heaven Sea Crystal Stone he got this time. The energy in the Heaven Sea Crystal Stone was difficult to be refined, making the stone unsuitable for cultivation, but the energy in it could improve the energy condensation degree of other crystal stones, that was to say, it could improve the quality of ordinary crystal stones. However, although Zhang Han now had a 5th level Heaven Sea crystal stone, it was not enough for him to upgrade the crystal vein under Mount New Moon to a medium level. Fortunately, it could improve the concentration of crystal ore solution, shorten its setting time, and greatly improve the condition of the whole Mount New Moon due to the elevation of the ore vein. Now, Mount New Moon was developing toward the goal of integration, and the upgrading of the crystal stone vein could also promote the upgrading of the Thunder Yang tree and shorten its growth time. Therefore, this Heaven Sea crystal stone was also Zhang Han's great harvest in this relic. In addition, Zhang Han got some power grass for Dai, and crystal stones for Little Hai as snacks. Eating these things was the quickest and most efficient way to improve Little Hai's strength. And this time, Zhang Han got a lot of spirit treasures and crystal stones, accounting for more than 30% of all the treasures he got, many of which were very useful. But Zhang Han didn't care about that at all, he just wanted to get home soon. When can you get home? Xian asked. I'm driving back home from Mount Snow, wait a while for me. When Zhang Han answered, Meng couldn't wait to speak. Xian chuckled when she saw her little girl trying to steal her husband from her. She switched to hands-free mode. Papa, why haven't you come back? Meng misses you. Daddy missed you too. I'll be back soon, Zhang Han said with a smile. Well, after you went out, Mama and I didn't go out to play today, and we haven't had dinner now. We are waiting for Papa to come back and have dinner together. Zhang Han checked the time and said, it's past 7 o'clock in the evening, haven't you had dinner yet? Go to eat something with your mother, because I have to drive for a while before I get home. We'll wait for you, Xian replied. We are not hungry, we shared some snacks just now while watching TV. Just some snacks, I haven't eaten ice cream yet, Papa, it's hot in the room. Meng complained. Zhang Han smiled and interrupted Meng. I'll buy some ice cream for you. Wow, Papa is great, I love you. Although he was on the phone, Zhang Han could imagine his little princess's happy expression and pouting lips. So he grinned as well. He chatted with Meng for more than 20 minutes, and most of the time, he was listening to his daughter. As a little girl, Meng was more active than Xian, and Zhang Han hoped that she could keep this kind of unrestrained character. Meng's future had to be different. After all, not everyone had a universal father like Zhang Han. After the call, Zhang Han bought 2 ice creams from the mall on his way back. Papa. Meng ran to Zhang Han as soon as he came back home and threw herself into his arms. Zhang Han squatted down, kissed Meng on her pink face, gave her an ice cream and Xian the other. After Zhang Han returned to the villa, Tanan and Mo Chengfeng went to Wang Zanping's residence. They planned to have a party in the evening to celebrate the success of the expedition. On the way, they decided which restaurant to go to. It was Western Mountain Restaurant, which was famous in Ice City. The Western Mountain Restaurant was large-scale and sold all kinds of special dishes. The chef of the restaurant was famous in Ice City. Xian kept sharing her ice cream with Zhang Han, who was resting. If Zif was here, she would again complain about their public display of affection. In the end, Meng and Xian ate 1 ice cream and fed the rest to Zhang Han. After eating the ice cream, Meng happily leaned on Zhang Han's chest. When Wang Zanping and the others were ready, Xian and Meng began to put on their thick clothes. It was warm in the room but cold outside. Papa, will we go back tomorrow? Shall we take the snowmen with us? After Meng went out, she looked at the 3 snowmen and asked Zhang Han. When Zhang Han was about to promise her, Xian interrupted him. No, we can't do that. Hong Kong is hot and the snowmen will melt as soon as we go back. But we have taken enough photos of them, and you can come back to enjoy the snow the next winter. Well, okay. Meng agreed. Xian rolled her eyes at Zhang Han, because she knew that Zhang Han would have fulfilled Meng Meng's wish at any price. Xian was better than Zhang Han in educating Meng Meng. Adults sometimes couldn't spoil their children, and they should learn to say number. Xian was helpless because Zhang Han always listened to what Meng Meng said and followed what she did. She understood Zhang Han, who had never seen Meng Meng in the past few years, therefore, she had to be the strict parent. To Xian's relief, Meng Meng was a good girl and never made trouble for her. After the family of three left their yard, they saw a group of people including Wang Zanping getting in their cars on the left side. They were excited and kept talking loudly. They could be heard vaguely. So amazing, you could never imagine what I saw in that relic. Long lightning, they were all eaten by our boss. It was Elder Meng's voice. Actually, he was not in the explorer team at all. As for those real explorers including Director Bai, they were also praising Zhang Han. The situation there was worse than you could imagine. Even Grandmaster Gai was in a dilemma. It was Grandmaster Zhang who turned the tide and convinced us of his strength. My master fought against Gai Xingkong before entering the relic, and we all knew that he would have been the winner. Then Gai Xingkong had a talk with my master somewhere else, and we were told that they were on the same side. When the martial artists who were chatting happily saw Zhang Han and his family coming, their discussion gradually stopped. It was the first time for Director Bai and the others to see Xian and Meng Meng, who immediately attracted their attention. Even though they were not interested in the entertainment industry, almost all of them had heard of Xian before, who was now called Miss Zhang Han. Rongjiaxin hesitated for a while and then said with a smile, I remember that your father had a good friend called Old Gai. I saw him several times back then, but I never expected him to be Gai Xingkong. It wasn't until my brother-in-law retired that he became famous. Yes, that's him. Zhang Han nodded and smiled. Let's go first, and talk about it in the restaurant. Okay, let's go. The group got into the cars next to them. Because Director Bai, Ltanan, and other people took the same cars to and from the relics, their vehicles were enough to form a long team to drive to Western Mountain Restaurant. Western Mountain Restaurant occupied a 7-story building in the downtown area of the Western District of Vice City. Its main color was brown and it looked solemn. There was a big plaque on the gate, and the outdoor parking lots on both sides were almost full of cars. This restaurant was well decorated, with high service quality and distinctive dishes, but the price was not very high, so it was popular. Zhang Han and his friends parked their cars in the parking lot and walked into the restaurant. There was a big round hall in the center of the first floor, which was the service desk and the place for queuing. Around it were 4-seat dining tables, almost full of people. It was not the normal time to eat, but there were still many people here. Hello, welcome, have you made a reservation? The hall manager immediately greeted the group of people and asked enthusiastically. We booked room 601 before. Zhao Feng nodded his head. The best rooms here were all on the 6th floor, and there was a service charge for each room. 601 was a large multifunctional room, which had 3 tables and a sofa at the back. But before Zhao Feng checked his mobile phone number, the 20-year-old female manager looked at him in surprise, and said after pondering, Room 601? Did you book it at 7:15 p.m. using a cell phone? Yes. I'm sorry, the time you set was 8:30 p.m. and I asked someone to call you then, but he didn't get through. We thought you might not come and then gave the room to another guest. I'm so sorry. The manager apologized. Though she seemed to be sincere, she knew actually that the room was arranged by the boss of the restaurant for some honored guests, and the boss would come in person after a while. Zhao Feng knew that there had to be some hidden reason, so he frowned. Seeing this, the manager said with shame, I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Now although there are no big rooms, there are still 2 small rooms on the 3rd floor, and you can go there. The 2nd floor is not a private area, and there are many vacant seats. You can sit down separately. Zhao Feng was hesitating. He didn't want to annoy Zhang Han at such a happy time, so he asked, "Master, shall we change to another restaurant or go to that small room?" While Zhang Han was thinking, a balding man hurried out from the inside. Seeing so many people standing there, he frowned, looked at the hall manager, and said, "Haven't you arranged them yet, boss? They booked room 601 before, but they're late. Seat them as soon as possible," the restaurant owner said and hurried out. Before he got to the door, his face changed and he said with a smile to the man who came in, "Child Gai, welcome." Gai Yulong came in with more than 10 outstanding young men from local families or sects. Their elders who followed Gai Xingkong to explore the relic were staying at the Gai house tonight, and these young men followed Gai Yulong to celebrate. When Gai Xingkong nodded at the restaurant owner and was about to enter through the door, he suddenly saw Zhang Han. Gai Xingkong was so surprised that he ignored the restaurant owner and walked forward to greet Zhang Han. "Mr. Zhang." All the young men following him were excited. "Master, Mr. Zhang, what a coincidence to meet Mr. Zhang here." The 10 young men all rushed to say hello to Zhang Han. The restaurant owner was left behind and stunned. "I have never seen Child Gai be so respectful to others. That man must be very powerful." Hiss. When Gai Yulong approached Zhang Han, he felt a little nervous. "Nice to meet you here, elder brother Zhang, sister Xian, and you, little princess." Gai Xingkong greeted the family of 3 politely. "Nice to meet you." "Hello, brother." Meng Meng looked at Gai Yulong curiously and waved her hand at him. "Hello." Zhang Han nodded and looked at Gai Yulong carefully, finding the young man to his liking. Wang Zanping knew that Zhang Han and Gai Xingkong were on the same side, so he stared at Gai Yulong and asked, "Did you occupy our room?" What room?" Gai Yulong was in confusion. "We booked room 601. Did you do the same as us?" Zhao Feng informed him. "No." Gai Yulong's face darkened as he replied, "I don't know." Then he looked at the restaurant owner seriously and asked, "They booked the room first, why did you give it to us?" The restaurant owner was frightened into sweating. Gai Yulong did not intend to pursue the matter. He looked at Zhang Han and said, "Brother Zhang, would you like to have dinner with us? That room seems to be big enough." "Yes, it's big enough." The restaurant owner nodded and echoed, "We'll arrange one more table in it." "Okay, fine." Finally, the large group of people went directly to the stairs, and the hall manager, who was already stunned, heard Gai Yulong say, "Brother Zhang, when will you come to my home? My second grandfather has been waiting for you." "Tomorrow morning." Then they entered the elevator. The restaurant owner who took the lead on the way was a little confused. Isn't Gai's second grandfather the head of the Gai family who is famous in northeast China? Is this seemingly ordinary young man at the same level as the head of the Gai clan? It's so scary. In the room, Gai Xingkong heard most of the martial artists not talking much about the relics, but about their family life, so he followed them to talk about some local interesting things. But those who came with him sat still very seriously. In the face of many elders, they were still a little uneasy. They finished dinner at almost 10 o'clock in the evening. When the other martial artists were still chatting, Zhang Han, Xian, and Meng Meng left the restaurant with Rong Jiaxin and Zhao Feng. They drove back to Ice Bay the first, took a walk outside for a while, and then went back to their room to sleep. With Zhang Han by their side, Xian and Meng Meng fell asleep much faster. Yesterday, Xian suddenly realized that she was not used to life without Zhang Han. At 7 o'clock the next morning, Zhang Han had prepared breakfast including steamed buns and rice porridge. Xian and Meng Meng washed their faces and ate breakfast before they began to get dressed. They dressed from 8 o'clock to 8:30, packed up their luggage and other things, and went out at 9. The other people also took their luggage and left Ice Bay the first, intending to visit the Gai clan house and return to Hong Kong in the afternoon. In the early morning, Gai Yulong came to visit Zhang Han, and then sat in the first car to guide them on the way to his family. The Gai family also had businesses, covering all of northeast China, but their manor was located in the downtown area of Ice City. It was in the center of the urban area of North River District, occupying a small hill. This area used to be on the edge of the city, or in the suburbs, but as the city expanded, it gradually became a central area. Although house prices had gone up a lot, such a big family like the Gai family would no longer be attracted by wealth. The motorcade went directly through the big iron gate of the Gai family manor and stopped in front of the large main residence. The main residence was located at the top of the low mountain, and the building was more ancient. At this time, about 20 people headed by Gai Xingkong were standing at the door of the main residence, smiling. "Han, you are here." After they got out, Gai Xingkong took the initiative to welcome them. "Good morning." Zhang Han smiled. "Nice to meet you, Uncle Gai. I'm Ziyan." "Well, nice to meet you, Grandfather Gai. I'm Zhang Yumeng, and they all call me Meng Meng." Meng Meng's greeting made everyone laugh, but Gai Xingkong was very happy. "Nice to meet you. Ziyan is really a pretty girl, and Meng Meng is so lovely. It's cold outside, let's go inside to have a talk." Gai Xingkong nodded at the group of people behind him and said. Then they all entered the main residence and seated themselves on the sofas in the hall. "Wow! Meng Meng is so cute. Now that you call me grandfather, I'll give you the jade pendant as a gift. Ziyan, I didn't know what you like, so I prepared a bracelet for you." Gai Xingkong took out 2 gifts. A gift was a must. "Thank you, Uncle Gai. Thank you, Grandfather Gai." Ziyan and Meng Meng thanked Gai Xingkong as they took the gifts. Zhang Han took a glance at their gifts and smiled. "You are very considerate, Uncle Gai." Both the 2 gifts were third-stage defensive spirit treasures, which was specially arranged by Gai Xingkong. The Gai family had been dominating northeast China for so many years, and 2 third-stage spirit treasures were nothing to them. Chapter 556, Returning to Hong Kong. Gai Xingkong chose 2 heaven-grade defensive treasures, although he knew Zhang Han could take care of himself. Ziyan and Meng Meng needed to be protected. The 2 gifts were hard to be broken, and even Gai Xingkong would spend tens of seconds to do it without the help of his divine-level Dragon Tiger Spear. Don't look down on those tens of seconds. Sometimes, what happened in 1 second may lead to completely different results. I'm your elder after all, although I haven't contacted you much before. My friendship with your father is everlasting, and I'm proud of his promising son. Now that we are a family, don't hesitate to ask your Uncle Gai for help whenever you're in trouble, Gai Xingkong told Zhang Han. Zhang Han was pleased with Gai Xingkong's frank words, so he nodded and replied with a smile, "Thank you, Uncle Gai. Ha ha." Gai Xingkong shook his head and looked at Zhang Han with admiration. "It's your generation's world. To tell you the truth, I'm amazed by you, Long. You're 23 years old, only a few years younger than Han. How old are you, Han?" "I'm almost 27, Zhang Han said. "Now you're 26 years old, Long. You're only 3 years younger than him, but you know the gap between you 2 in martial arts, so don't be arrogant in the future. Behind an able man there are always other able men. You should have a down-to-earth attitude," said Gai Xingkong while looking at Gai Yulong. "Yes, grandfather." Gai Yulong stood up and bowed at Gai Xingkong. Gai Yulong was overwhelmed by the unexpected favor of being educated by Gai Xingkong. His second grandfather seldom cared about the cultivation or other affairs of his family members. The young generation who could be educated by him were envied at home. "I see." Gai Xingkong nodded. Then he continued to talk with Zhang Han and his family. Meng Meng was sitting next to Zhang Han and looking around with her blinking eyes, attracting many uncles and aunts with her cute face. Some people were even worried, the little girl is so beautiful as a child, can she maintain her beauty when she grows up? Zhang Han's face darkened when he heard the young man's words. He almost wanted to kill the rude guy. But the young man's face blushed as soon as he finished speaking, and then he explained, "Meng Meng is so pretty now." Hearing his words, many of the Gai family members stared at him. "Stop talking if you don't know what to say." Although he spoke in a low voice, many people heard him, because 80% of the guests present were martial artists. Aside from Meng Meng, Xian's beauty also attracted a lot of attention. All the members of the Gai family's younger generations were excited. "Xian, my God, she got married, she has a daughter." If this is spread out, the whole entertainment circle will be shocked. Meng Meng is so beautiful and lovely, she will become an influencer if she's noticed by the public. She will be more popular than many celebrities. Maybe she can get the title of the most beautiful little girl in China. Wow, it's amazing. A 16 or 17-year-old girl was so excited that her face turned red. They did a good job keeping it secret, not leaking even a bit of information. All of them are good looking, the father is handsome, the mother is pretty, and their daughter is beautiful and lovely. Even Zhang Han looked more handsome while next to Xian and Meng Meng. I want to take a picture with her. I want to ask for her autograph. I can't help it, but grandfather is there. What can I do? When will grandfather leave? Even though all the comments of the younger generation could be heard by Gai Xingkong, he didn't listen to them carefully, except for the last sentence. Gai Xingkong turned his head and looked at that little fan, his mouth quivering. Wow, my family members even think I'm in the way when Han comes here. Finally, after lunch, the opportunity for Xian's fans came. Seeing Xian and Meng Meng sitting on the sofa beside them, one of the brave 16 or 17-year-old girls ran toward them. "Nice to meet you, Sister Xian and Meng Meng. I'm Gai Ying. May I take a picture with you?" "Of course you can." Xian nodded. Meng Meng was also very happy. She waved her hand and said, "Yes, thank you." That brave girl couldn't help smiling. She took out her mobile phone and adjusted her expression several times before taking a satisfactory picture. She continued and took more than 10 of them, and then ran off happily. Clatter. It was just the beginning. About a dozen girls under the age of 20 surrounded Xian and Meng Meng. The girl who took the first photo was sitting happily on the sofa with her mobile phone. She chose a photo of her and Xian and wanted to send it to her friends. "Well, Ying, enjoy, keep them to yourself, don't send it to others." Gai Ying looked up and immediately put down her cell phone. "I see, okay, father." Xian's area was the most lively at present. On the other side, Gai Xingkong, Wang Zanping and Rong Jiexin were talking at the table. After learning that Rong Jiexin was Rong Jiali's sister, Gai Xingkong shared some of his old memories with them. Zhang Han was very interested in those old stories. Zhang Han felt proud as he listened to the retelling of his father's heroic deeds. It surprised me when I learned that Zhang Han Yang, the famous martial artist, was Guang Yu's son. Gai Xingkong sighed with emotion as he turned his gaze to Zhang Han. "In fact, your appearance gave me a familiar feeling at the beginning, but I didn't think about that for a while. Then you finally exerted your sword moves, which were very similar to your father's at that moment, and I suddenly thought of that matter. Thanks for our battle." Zhang Han chuckled and said. "The plan that both of you kept so secret that even my aunt didn't know of it. You're amazing. If otherwise, your father wouldn't have lived in peace for so many years." Gai Xingkong sighed and turned his gaze to Meng Meng and Xian. "Han, I'm surprised that you have a wife and daughter now. Xian is kind, gentle, outgoing and pretty." However, the attention of other guests on the table shifted from Xian to Gai Xingkong's face. Gai Xingkong hesitated for a while and then said, "If you had a boy, you could teach him cultivation methods." "Uncle Gai, you are wrong." Zhang Han was slightly unhappy. "Boys are too naughty, and they can even destroy a house. I like my daughter, who is considerate and lively." Zhang Han liked Meng Meng so much that he had abandoned his backward opinion of valuing men over women. Girls can be no better than boys. Meng Meng will surpass all those talents in the future. said Zhang Han with determination as he looked at Meng Meng. Gai Xingkong smiled and nodded. Your words make sense, and girls are more obedient than boys, but boys are all gifted fighters and girls don't have their inborn belligerence. For example, there aren't many girls in the world who can be as excellent as Mugs with the Luofu sword sect, but she still has to rely on her father, a patriarch, to reach such a level. Mugs. Zhang Han smiled and said, I don't care about her at all. Meng Meng will defeat her within 20 years. Rong Jiaxin couldn't help laughing when he saw Zhang Han's expression. Then she said, Brother Gai, Han loves Meng Meng so much that we can't persuade him at all. Ha ha ha. Gai Xingkong also laughed. I understand him. He's the kind of parent who dotes on his child. No matter if it's a son or a daughter, he would offer training. Han, you and Xian are still young, you can give birth to more children. It depends. Zhang Han smiled and shook his head. Given Xian's small chance of pregnancy, Meng Meng's birth had been a miracle. As long as the problem with Xian's Danshan remained unsolved, she would be unable to get pregnant again. Zhang Han was curious about it. Although there were 4,000 clouds above his soul sense sea, he still couldn't check Xian's Danshan. He was sure that Xian was not a normal girl, because she helped in promoting the diameter of Zhang Han's Danshan from 5 to 10 inches, which was amazing. Besides, Xian had trouble getting pregnant because of her special constitution, and Zhang Han guessed there might be an amazing secret hidden inside her. Perhaps the secret was hidden in her Danshan, making her seem like a normal person. That was to say, Xian would also get sick of things like colds or fevers, just like an ordinary person. It was weird. But no matter what it was, Zhang Han believed that he would uncover the mystery in the future. Other people who didn't know the truth thought that Zhang Han implied that he wouldn't take contraceptive measures, letting Xian get pregnant at random. Yes, it depends. Gai Xingkong smiled. He was actually complaining silently. When you have a son, you'll understand that he's a more suitable heir. Many of the Gai family members wanted to laugh. Patriarch, what qualifications do you have to comment on it? Although you've been discussing whether it's better to have a son or a daughter, you don't even have a child. When all the guests were about to finish eating, Gai Xingkong raised his eyebrows and said, Han, come with me. Okay. Zhang Han nodded. He left the table and followed Gai Xingkong out of the restaurant through the back door, heading to the innermost room on the second floor of his villa. When Gai Xingkong opened the door, Zhang Han saw many shelves inside. This is my storeroom for natural precious materials. There are 3 holy level treasures in it, and you can choose one of them, said Gai Xingkong. Zhang Han scanned the room with his soul sense. After checking all the spirit treasures, he found 3 spirit treasures that were at the 4th stage, among all the 3-level materials. The Gai family really had a solid material foundation. I came to see if there were any treasures I needed. Now it seems that there really are some. Zhang Han's eyes lit up as he went further inside. The gate of the worldlet would be opened in half a year. Zhang Han wanted to seize every opportunity to make preparations for it. That trip was really fruitful. On the innermost shelf, there were only 3 kinds of 4th stage spirit treasures. On the far left was a long sword, in the middle was a knife, but on the other end was a turtle shell with a diameter of 1 meter. The tortoise shell was of a light gold color, whose perfect outline made it a piece of art. But when Zhang Han probed it with his soul sense, he found a sealed soul within. Golden profound tortoise. It was from a branch family of Xuanhuan, the guardian beast of the north. The golden profound tortoise had a strong defense ability. All of its body parts were valuable, including its shell, a 4th stage spirit treasure, but the tortoise was only good at defense, not for attacks. Zhang Han came up with an idea when he saw the shell. What if I absorb the souls of the cardinal guardian beasts with my 18 cards? Then I can create a 4 symbols formation with the cards, which is powerful and can even become my trump card. King Long, Azure Dragon, Baihu, White Tiger, Zakei, Vermilion Bird, and Xuanhuan, black tortoise, were the guardian beasts in all four directions. But Zhang Han could replace them with animals with the same attributes when using the four symbols formation, instead of having to use the souls of those four kinds of animals. Noticing Zhang Han's gaze, Gai Xingkong said, "I got it from a sea-level relic. There was a great area of water in that relic and I found a large iron pot on the beach, which contained nothing but this tortoise shell, a fourth-stage spirit treasure. I took it back as a defensive treasure, and even my dragon tiger spear failed to leave a scratch on it." Hearing that, Zhang Han said in surprise, "Xuanhuan soup, it seems that the one who killed this tortoise was also a powerful master. There was always someone amazing in the Saint Warrior planet." What a pity that Zhang Han had been reborn in the cultivation ending period and couldn't meet the numerous great masters from the legends, but at the same time, that special period gave Zhang Han more opportunities and time to promote himself. Xuanhuan soup, is it the shell of Xuanhuan, and not a normal tortoise? Gai Xingkong was stunned. Xuanhuan is a legendary spirit beast. Almost, Zhang Han shook his head and said, "Uncle Gai, the shell is useful to me and I want it. The fourth stage spirit treasure is precious, so I'll exchange it with something." When Zhang Han was speaking, Mugh's demon dancing sword and Yilong Yuan's golden armor appeared in his hands. "Choose one of them, Uncle Gai." Gai Xingkong raised his eyebrows and shook his hand. "Don't do this, Han. I'm your uncle, your father's good friend. It's only proper for me to hand you a gift. Don't be courteous with me." And Gai Xingkong forced a smile as he continued, "I dare not take either of them. Though Yilong Yuan is an outstanding disciple of the Lihan sect and Mugh's is a princess of the Luofu sword sect, you're supported by the Heavenly Knights sect, so you don't need to care too much when challenging them. But the Gai family can't bear their anger. Just take Uncle Gai's gift, Han. I don't want anything in return." "Okay." Zhang Han stopped persuading Gai Xingkong and took the shell. "By the way, these two holy level weapons have already been refined by them. Why can they play such a powerful role in your hand?" Gai Xingkong asked curiously. "Because I sealed them, and now I can use more than 70% of their power," Zhang Han replied. What Zhang Han didn't tell Gai Xingkong was that when he reached the innateness stage, he could refine those two holy level weapons with secret methods and completely eliminate the traces left by their former masters. Gai Xingkong was stunned by Zhang Han's words. "But you were still tied with me under such unfavorable conditions and my dragon tiger spear didn't work at all. Han, tell me, how many trump cards did you have when we fought?" "Well," Zhang Han thought about it and replied, "if both of us had used our trump cards, the battle would have been a draw. In fact, the likelihood Zhang Han winning was higher, but he didn't mention it." Gai Xingkong was silent for several seconds, and finally commented, "A monster." After leaving the room, Gai Xingkong took the lead and said, "King Wang said that you're already at the divine realm stage in some aspects. It may be spiritual sense mind trick, right?" "Almost," Zhang Han replied frankly because it was not a secret. When he scanned around with his soul sense while in that relic, many explorers had noticed his strength. "How far is your strength from reaching the divine realm stage?" Gai Xingkong's eyes lit up. I still have a short way to go." Zhang Han thought about it and replied modestly. He was currently at the middle stage of building base, or Grand Master middle stage according to the standards of the martial arts world, but he didn't want to shock Gai Xingkong by showing his real strength. Moreover, the Heaven Sea Crystal Stone he got in the relic would help him to reach the Foundation late stage. Then he wouldn't be far away from the innateness stage. At this time, Zhang Han felt that the trip to the northeast was worth it. It was really easy to find spirit treasures in that B-level relic, which was close to be graded as an A-level. Zhang Han calculated and found that the explorers had brought out a total of 3,000 or 4,000 precious stones. "You'd better go back to the Heavenly Knights sect when you are about to reach the Divine Realm stage. Each famous sect in the worldlet has a special cultivating base, which will help you a lot, Gai Xingkong said to Zhang Han. I see. They chatted and went back to the restaurant. They finished lunch at 1:30 in the afternoon. Zhang Han and his friends packed their bags, got on the Gai family's motorcade, and were sent to the airport by Gai Xingkong and his family members. As for the cars that Elder Meng rented, they were sent back by the Gai family. After Zhang Han arrived at the airport, he talked with Gai Xingkong for a while, and then got on his private helicopter while being under the Gai family members' scrutiny. They rested for a few minutes. The helicopter took off and slowly lifted into the air. We're going home. Meng was so happy that she kept blinking her big eyes and looking outside the window after the helicopter started to fly smoothly. Papa, Mama, how long will our snowman be there? Until the temperature here gets hot and the warm sunshine melts the snow, Xian replied with a smile, but they always exist in our minds and photos. It's a beautiful memory of Meng, Papa and Mama. While Xian's answer was very elegant, Zhang Han's answer was more free and simple. In the future, we will build a long-term preserved snowman, so that Meng can see it whenever she wants. Okay, I love you, Papa and Mama. Meng replied happily. Chapter 557, Zhao Feng's Spring. Generally speaking, the way home was a little boring. Although Meng's company added a lot of fun to Zhang Han's and Xian's journey, after playing in the cabin for an hour, the little girl lolled on her sofa and fell asleep. I'm a bit sleepy, too. I'm going to sleep for a while, Xian whispered to Zhang Han. Sweet dreams. Zhang Han smiled. Then he covered Meng with a blanket and Xian with another. The mother and daughter pair fell asleep. The plane had been customized by a prince of Dubai who pursued pleasure. It had a large cabin area and a luxurious interior decoration. The resting room of the family of three was very quiet. Wang Zanping, Wang Ming, Zhao Feng and the others were resting in another part of the cabin. They seldom communicated with each other, and even if they talked occasionally, their voices were very low. After that period of contact, Rong Jiaxin, as an elder, was very satisfied with Xian. She knew that the young couple's life was very happy, not because Zhang Han, as a martial artist, was rich in strength and money, but because their life was in good order in all aspects, including daily cooking, room cleaning, travel planning, etc. Rong Jiaxin had observed from various details that Zhang Han and Xian complemented each other in life, which made her feel quite relieved. Meng and Xian slept for almost 2 hours. After they woke up, they rested for a few minutes, drank some warm water, and then became active again. They even sang a nursery rhyme together. Dear little rabbit, open the door, open it quickly, I want to come in. I can't open it, Mom hasn't come back, I can't open the door. Their clear voices echoed in the whole cabin, making the atmosphere more active, so the other people began talking to each other. After the steward reminded them that they were about to arrive in Hong Kong, Zhang and his family went to the dressing room and changed into thinner clothes to embrace the local warm weather. After all the passengers changed clothes one by one, the plane landed at the airport behind the Meng group very smoothly 10 minutes later. When getting off the plane, Zhao Feng arranged his men to send their luggage to the Cold Immortal School. There were some people waiting for them near the plane. Among them were the senior managers led by Sun Ming, Zhang Li, Liang Hao, Liang Mengkai, Brother Long and some members of the security group, including Instructor Liu and 48 members of the Wolf Head Detachment, 16 of whom were not present. All those 16 men were the ones following the members of the security group, to advance to the Profound Stage Master stage. In addition to Zhao Feng, Ahu, Elder Meng, Xuyong and Leng Yi, who had reached the Heaven Stage level, all 51 members of the security group were now at the Profound Stage Master level with the help of abundant martial arts resources, as well as skills and body movement training. According to the martial arts criteria, all of them could have been famous masters, making a living by themselves. but their reputation hadn't been established yet. That was not only because they rarely went out for tasks on their own, but also because Zhang Han's achievements were too dazzling. Brother, sister-in-law, Meng, did you miss your aunt? Zhang Li ran to them, greeting everyone first, then hugging Meng and asking with a smile, well? Meng was hesitant after hearing Zhang Li's question. I was so happy these days that I forgot to miss her. Your expression is telling me that you didn't miss me at all. Zhang Han pretended to get angry. I missed you. Meng replied in a hurry, her big eyes blinking. Both Papa and Mama thought it was a pity that Aunt Lili didn't come with us. Well, you passed my test. Let's go to eat ice cream first. Zhang Li put Meng on the ground, holding her little hand and walking forward. Ice cream? Meng's eyes lit up because she was just thinking about it. When she was about to go with Zhang Li, she turned around to look at Xian. Go with her. Xian smiled. Wow, let's go. Meng cheered. It was almost 6 o'clock in the afternoon. They were going to have dinner in the company's restaurant. When they were entering the building, Instructor Liu quietly approached Zhao Feng. He reached out with his fingers and touched Zhao Feng's waist, beckoning him to step back. Zhao Feng stopped in surprise and turned his gaze to Instructor Liu. What's wrong? I have something to ask you. Come with me. Instructor Liu quickly pulled Zhao Feng aside. He took out a pack of cigarettes, then offered one to Zhao Feng and lighting another for himself. There is no free lunch. You must be up to something. Are you in any trouble? Zhao Feng was amused by Instructor Liu. Hey, I heard that our boss and North Tiger Gai Xing Kong had a fight. Is it true? Instructor Liu asked first. In fact, this news hadn't been widely or quickly spread in the martial arts circle yet. It would take some time for it to be known to all. But Tannen, Director Bai and Protector Leng returned to Hong Kong the previous day. They had told the news to some of their friends. When he noticed the amazing promotion speed of the members of Meng security group, Instructor Liu began to make his own plan. Then he heard that Zhang Han Yang with Demon Dancing Sword and Gai Xing Kong with Divine-level Dragon Tiger Spear had tied. He was stunned, and then made a decision after careful consideration, which was reported to leading Cardinal Liu. Although the plan was rejected at first, leading Cardinal Liu finally compromised due to his persistence. Hearing Instructor Liu's question, Zhao Feng nodded, yes. But there was a misunderstanding between my master and Grandmaster Gai, which was finally solved and they became friends. Master Gai has sent many treasures to Master. It's amazing. Instructor Liu forced a smile. Instructor, just tell me what you want to say. If you continue to hesitate, I will leave, Zhao Feng said. Well, why not be more patient? Instructor Liu stared at him and said, I want to join your security group with all my 48 team members. What do you think? Hearing Instructor Liu's words, PFFT. Zhao Feng was suddenly choked by the smoke. He coughed several times before staring at Instructor Liu and asking in disbelief, how can this be achieved? Can the Wolf-Head detachment join the security team? Can your leaders agree with you? The price I paid was to let 16 of my teammates to be assigned to various troops as instructors. In addition, I promised them to complete some very difficult tasks, the process being similar to the tasks we received from the National Security Agency. Instructor Liu shook his head and said, anyway, my leaders agreed with me. This. Zhang Feng forced a smile. Instructor, why do you want to join our security group? I'm always slower than your group members in cultivation, so I decided to join you. Instructor Liu scratched his head and smiled. It's a good opportunity for me to follow your boss, and I have been dreaming of visiting the Cold Mortal School. Zhao Feng's mouth slightly twitched. Before Zhao Feng could say something, Instructor Liu placed his arm around Zhao Feng's shoulder and whispered, I wouldn't dare tell your boss directly, because I'm afraid of being refused. That's why I turn to you, Master Zhang's first disciple, for help. It's not necessary. Zhao Feng shook his head and smiled. we've already regarded you as one of us, and I'm sure Master will agree with you, but, this is serious and we should tell Master first. Before that, I want to know, how do you and your team members intend to join us? Zhao Feng wanted to make it clear, in the likelihood that Instructor Liu and his team members might still obey their leader's commands after joining the security group. Although Zhang Han wouldn't care about it, Zhao Feng wanted everything in order. Mr. Liu understood Zhao Feng, so he clapped his chest and said, "We will join you completely. You can rest assured that our military status will be the same as yours. We are no longer regular armies." "Okay, ha ha ha, we will soon be teammates." Zhao Feng grinned happily. He was willing to be in the same team. Zhao Feng smiled and wanted to hug Instructor Liu, who stretched out his hand and clapped it on Zhao Feng's face. "Stay away from me, I don't want to hug a man. Will you cast me aside when I have served your purpose?" Zhao Feng pretended to be annoyed. "Stop joking, I have another thing to tell you, and it's about Liang Menkai," said Instructor Liu. "What is it?" Zhao Feng was surprised. "Well, you have a rival. Liang Menkai has a very handsome classmate. They've had several meals together these days and chatted happily. I know it because Liang Menkai arranged all the meals here in Master Zhang's restaurant." "I see, there's nothing to worry about." Zhao Feng smiled. "That's good, we just had our meal and are going to train for a while. I'll wait for your good news," said Instructor Liu. "Okay, see you." Zhang Feng nodded. Just after Instructor Liu left, Zhao Feng took out his mobile phone and sent a WeChat message to Liang Menkai. "I heard that your old classmate is here, is that right?" "Yes, and he is so handsome," Liang Menkai soon replied. Zhao Feng's face darkened and he rushed toward the restaurant. Human beings were always selfish in love, and Zhao Feng was no exception. He was now thinking about how to deal with Liang Menkai's old classmate. Zhao Feng entered the restaurant. He was a little annoyed and didn't say anything to Liang Menkai. Liang Menkai was surprised by his attitude. "Wow, you're too mean. HMPH." Seeing that Liang Menkai also ignored him, Zhao Feng was even more unhappy. He kept silent during dinner and didn't tell Zhang Han about Instructor Liu's plan. Instructor Liu, who was waiting for the good news, would regret telling Zhao Feng about it. After dinner, Zhang Han and the others drove back to the Cold Immortal School. While Zhao Feng stayed in the restaurant, Liang Hao followed Zhang Li to the nightclub. In recent times, Zhang Li only performed once a week, but every time she attracted many customers. Liang Menkai walked in the square and saw Zhao Feng following her. She gave a light snort, then took out her mobile phone and pretended to answer it. "Hello, Xiang, is that a date? Okay, I'll go with you." "She won't go with you," Zhao Feng shouted. Liang Menkai was shocked by Zhao Feng, who flashed towards her like the wind and took her cell phone. Zhao Feng raised the phone to his ear and said angrily, "Undate, who will you date? Who do you want to date?" Zhao Feng suddenly felt that something was odd. He looked at the mobile screen carefully and found that Liang Menkai talking with anyone. Swish. Zhao Feng blushed. He looked at Liang Menkai with a sneer on her face, and felt that his forehead began to sweat. "Zhao Feng, how dare you take my cell phone without my permission? Would you do something worse things in the future? I see right through you, you're also a bad man." Liang Menkai snorted and said, "I told my classmate that I would introduce my boyfriend to him when you came back. I didn't expect you to be." Hearing her words, Zhao Feng felt that he was in the middle of spring. "You told him that you had a boyfriend? You agreed to be my girlfriend?" Zhao Feng asked in surprise. "I haven't agreed to be your girlfriend yet, because of your behavior. I have to think about it carefully." Humph. Liang Menkai was stunned by a sudden kiss. It was her first kiss. Zhao Feng lost his mind in love. After the long kiss, Liang Menkai's face was red. She was too shy to look up in Zhao Feng's arms. Zhao Feng was overjoyed that he succeeded after pursuing the beauty. That kiss marked the beginning of their relationship. Liang Mengkai was a little depressed because her first kiss had been stolen by Zhao Feng that way. Although Zhao Feng wanted to do something with Liang Mengkai, he calmed down because she was a traditional girl. Then he decided to wait for the girl's birthday and make some preparations before that. The two spent more than an hour chatting in a bench of the square. That was, until he saw the figure of Instructor Liu with more than 10 generals moving in a hurry. It's terrible, run. Without hesitation, Zhao Feng took Liang Mengkai's hand and ran to the parking lot on the side. Brothers, catch him. Instructor Liu ran after them with his men. It seemed that they were going to beat Zhao Feng. Liang Mengkai screamed with fear. Fortunately, Zhao Feng's car was nearby. They quickly got in and drove away. Damn it, if I hadn't come here, they would have chatted here all night long, said Instructor Liu while mumbling. Then he waved his hand and ordered, retreat. They went back to their training. Puff. Liang Mengkai patted her chest and said nervously, wasn't that Instructor Liu? Why did he bring people to beat us? Is kissing not allowed in the square? Zhao Feng was amused by the lovely girl. I'm going to do something for him, and he's probably impatiently waiting for me, so he took someone here to scare us. Where shall we go now? Asked Liang Mengkai. I'll go to the Cold Immortal School and tell my master something. Then we'll go wherever you like. Zhao Feng drove towards the Cold Immortal School. They drove all the way to the front of the castle. Seeing the brilliant construction, Liang Mengkai couldn't help sighing with emotion. What a beautiful place. I will build a smaller castle behind it, that will be our home. Zhao Feng laughed. Stop dreaming. Liang Mengkai rolled her eyes at Zhao Feng and said, go and do your business, I'll wait for you here. Okay. Zhao Feng got out of the car. He called Zhang Han first, then went to the hall on the 3rd floor. He sat on the sofa and waited for 2 minutes. After that, Zhang Han came out of the bedroom. After hearing Instructor Liu's plan, Zhang Han welcomed all those new members happily. After chatting for a while, Zhao Feng rushed back to the car, and went to the company's Star Moon Bar with Liang Mengkai. It was just 8 o'clock in the evening, so they could stay there for a long time. Meng wanted to play with Dai and Little Hai. The family of 3 went to the back mountain. They didn't have to worry about mosquitoes, so they could play outdoors at night. At this time, streetlights had been installed on both sides of all the winding roads in the residential area of Mount New Moon. Even the edge of the back mountain had lighting equipment at the moment. However, the area of the back mountain was too large, and no matter how intense the light was, it couldn't illuminate the lawn on the inside. Fortunately, the moon that night was relatively round. Under its brightness, all the scenery could be clearly appreciated. Big Hai, Little Hai, did you miss Meng? Meng played happily with the 2 Hai powers and the pet dogs. After a while, 3 6-year-old children of the Wang family came running. Uncle Zhang, can we play with Meng? One of the little girls with a ponytail asked timidly. Of course you can. Go and play with her. After they left, 2 16 or 17-year-olds of the Wang family approached quickly. They greeted Zhang Han and Xian shyly, and then ran to the back mountain to look after their younger brothers and sisters. There are a few children in my uncle's family, but few of them are about the same age as Meng, said Xian with a smile. After looking at the back mountain, Meng was happy to meet her little friends, and they got along well during those days. After a while, they began running and jumping happily. Does Meng have any homework? Oh yes, a speech for the Christmas holidays. Zhang Han suddenly reminded Xian. Yes, she'll deliver a speech. I'm going to pick out some photos to use as background projection and I'll send them to Teacher Lu. Xian was excited. Taking out her cell phone, she began to select photos. Not too many, just 1 photo for each place. As Xian spoke, she leaned against Zhang Han's chest. They selected 8 photos and sent them to Lugo. The photos are very beautiful. I believe that Meng will give an excellent speech tomorrow. I'm sorry about troubling you. It's not a problem at all. They simply communicated with the teacher and finished the logistics work. It was the last day of the holiday. Meng was allowed to have a good time and return to the castle at 9 p.m. After washing, lying on the bed of their big bedroom, Xian and Meng realized that their own home was the most comfortable. In Zhang Han's story, the mother and daughter fell asleep. Mount New Moon was peaceful at night. Chapter 558, Foundation Late Stage. Hello, everyone. Did you have a good time during your Christmas vacation? The next morning, all the children went back to class 5 in high spirits. While in class, Lugo clapped her hands and started with that question and a smile. Yes. All the students replied clearly and tenderly, which was also a kind of auditory enjoyment. Did you forget the task assigned by your teacher? Lugo asked again with a smile. No. Yes. These were some naughty students. Lugo pouted and said, I heard some students say that they forgot about it. Okay. In this class, we are going to give a speech on the Christmas holiday. If you perform well, you will get a little red flower. Meng's eyes lit up. A little red flower. What we are going to do is to give an impromptu speech, which means that you can tell us where you went to have fun or to study during your holiday. Let me give you an example. With a slight cough, Lugo purposely stepped back and then returned to the stage, waved and said, Hello, everyone, I'm your teacher Lu. I had a good time during the Christmas holiday. I went to Dubai with 3 friends. The scenery there was beautiful. We spent 5 days there and ate a lot of special food, such as... Lugo made a simple demonstration and allowed the students to begin. The first one on the stage was Stephen on the far right. During the Christmas holiday, my family and I went to Disney and had a good time. Later, when we came back home, we planned to visit Meng, but I heard that Meng went to the north of China, so I didn't go out again. Stephen returned to his seat while the others applauded. He didn't prepare photos, and his family seldom took any. The second student was a little chubby boy. When he went up stage, Lugo turned the projection device on. She began to show the pictures prepared by the boy's parents. Those pictures showed several landmark buildings in Macau. While the photos were displaying, that boy said, I went to Macau with my father and mother, then I went to visit my grandma. She cooked a lot of prawns, which were delicious. Those scenes of modern society didn't interest the children very much, and only the pictures of the rural scenery brought back by Lehman attracted many children's attention. They hadn't gone to the countryside yet, and they were very interested in new things. Well, Min's speech is very good. I'll reward you with a little red flower. Lugo took out a little red flower from the box beside her. Lehman took the flower mechanically. He didn't care about the little thing. But Meng cared about it. Now she was staring at the little red flowers in Teacher Lu's boxes, thinking, how many flowers can I take back home? How many things will Papa promise me? Meng looked down at her little fingers. It's not enough to count my flowers with my fingers. At this time, Lugo looked at Meng and said with a smile, next is Meng. Meng and her father and mother went to a very interesting place these days. The photos are very beautiful. Let's welcome Meng to make a speech. Yes. Meng jumped down her chair and ran to the platform. Meng used to be very shy, although she would still be shy sometimes. She was much braver than before. Meng often appeared in various occasions with her parents and many others, so she wasn't afraid of strangers. On stage, Meng was silent for 2 seconds. I went to the north with Papa and Mama, which was called Ice City. We didn't wear much when we got on the plane, but we wore a lot of clothes when we got off the plane. I still felt very cold then until Papa and Mama bought clothes with wool, and it was warm. Meng turned to look at the picture on the screen. We had a good time in Ice City. It has a long street and we bought clothes there. By the river, we played a lot of games, and there was a dog pulling a car to run with us. This is when we played throwing snowballs, playing with snowballs, fighting with snowballs. This is Ice World, which is very big. This is Papa taking me skiing. This is the snowman that I made with Papa and Mama. It's beautiful. I forget the name of these places. We found little squirrels there. It was cold in winter and they were all hidden in their nests. My Papa was so powerful, and he asked them to come out to play with me. Many of Meng Meng's classmates were attracted by her words and photos. Their eyes were all lit up. 70% of them had never played with snow and they looked forward to such a chance. Wang Yihan was one of them. After school, the children began to discuss with their parents about when and where they could play with the snow. Many parents felt helpless. When Meng Meng finished speaking, her big eyes blinked and she asked Lugo, "Teacher Lu, can I get a little red flower?" Huh? Lugo was surprised. She felt that Meng Meng had a stubborn love for little red flowers. In order to get the little red flower, Meng Meng never cried or made noise at school, and she was obedient in all the activities, including going to bed after lunch. That was due to her parents' effective guidance. Without it, Li Mun would not care much about the little red flower and the honor it represented. Lugo didn't know how important Zhang Han was to Meng Meng. At this time, looking at Meng Meng's clear eyes and feeling her expectation, Lugo knew that even if Meng Meng didn't give a speech, she would have given the little girl a little red flower. Meng Meng's speech was very good. "You must be rewarded with a little red flower." Lugo took out a little red flower and handed it to Meng Meng. Meng Meng was overjoyed. When Meng Meng went to the northeast, "Did you learn the northeast dialect?" Lugo asked with a smile. "Northeast dialect, I only learned 2 sentences." Meng Meng pouted her mouth. "One is 'What are you doing?' and the other is 'What's the matter?' Ha ha ha." Lugo could not help laughing. Then she praised and looked at Meng Meng. "Meng Meng is really smart. Okay, go back to your seat." She took the lead in clapping. For Meng Meng, it had been a wonderful trip to the northeast, and she shared her travel experience with her classmates, earning the applause of her classmates and the flower, which made her very happy. Back in her seat, the little girl watched the other students' speeches attentively. School life started again, but 2 weeks later winter vacation would come. Meng Meng was thinking about something. "I will have 15 little red flowers soon, and then I will get a cup." The children of the junior class in the kindergarten had just returned from the holiday and were very excited about communicating in the classroom. Xian and Zuf went to the company that day. There were a lot of things they needed to deal with. For the New Year show the previous day, more than 20 TV stations across the country invited Xian, but she didn't commit to any because she wanted to go to the northeast for a holiday. If she had promised them, she would have arrived at the rehearsal site a few days in advance to make some preparations. Although Xian gave up attending all the New Year shows, she was invited to the Spring Festival Gala of many TV stations, including the one from the Shangjing station. Xian was beautiful, popular, and good at singing, which could increase the audience rating of the Spring Festival Gala. Therefore, she had become the target of competition among the major TV stations. But it was too early to discuss the Spring Festival Gala now, and Xian's recent work was still about the cooperation of previous singles. Xian started to work, while Zhang Han stayed in the cold and mortal school. He began refining power grass in the morning. When Zhao Feng returned to the school with some spirit-level herbs from the National Security Agency, Zhang Han had just finished refining power grass and was adding some subsidiary material to it. Zhang Han kept refining until noon. Bang! A muffled sound came out. Even the 5-element stove trembled dozens of times, and then a white light flew out. Zhang Han stretched out his right hand, turning his spiritual force into an energy palm, and then he grabbed the white light with the palm. A medium-quality power elixir at the 4th level. Not bad. Dai. Zhang Han called. Not far from the back of the mountain, Dai, who was rolling and playing by himself, quickly stood up and ran over with its 4 limbs. Whoosh! The pill was thrown by Zhang Han to Dai, which drew an arc in the air and fell into Dai's mouth. Squelch, squelch. Dai chewed a few times and scratched its head. It doesn't taste very good. In the next moment, Dai felt as if its muscles were burning. But the improvement of strength made Dai feel more comfortable. Bang, 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 bang. Dai pounded its chest and roared to the sky. The drum-like sound resounded through Mount New Moon. Wang Zanping, Wang Zhanhong and Wang Ming, who were watching the 100 formation image in the dense forest, quickly ran over and watched quietly nearby. Dai's body began to grow tall, and it stopped slowly until it was close to 5 meters. Wow, Dai is too tall. Zhao Feng was shocked. Dai was now 5 meters high, giving quite a fearsome image. Because of its strong body, it looked like a hill. It's amazing. Wang Zanping shook his head and smiled. In Wang Zanping's opinion, Dai and Little Hai were lucky enough to follow Han. Their future road would be smooth. I'm stressful now. Wang Ming looked up at Dai. Dai was satisfied with its body, and it kept laughing silently. I'm tall enough to be called King Kong. Dai scratched its head. However, Zhang Han coughed to clear his throat and ordered, you can become smaller, otherwise Meng can't play with you. Ooh, ooh. Dai thought for a while and then turned smaller and smaller under everyone's gazes. Finally, it reached the height of 2.5 meters. Little Hai was chewing gemstones while watching Dai. Brother's strength has improved again, I must keep up with him. The others soon went back to their own businesses. Zhang Han returned to the Thunder Yang tree alone. He sat cross-legged, closed his eyes and rested for 20 seconds, then suddenly opened his eyes. The Heaven Sea crystal stone appeared in his right palm. Go. Zhang Han began communicating with the Thunder Yang tree through his soul sense. The whole trunk suddenly shook, and then the root of the tree came out, taking away the Heaven Sea crystal stone in Zhang Han's hand and throwing it into the crystal stone vein at the bottom of the mountain. Clatter. The Heaven Sea crystal stone erupted with strong light, and then turned into a wave-like energy, sweeping the whole crystal vein. All the crystals began to solidify rapidly. At the same time, they emitted pure spiritual chi due to the surging energy. The spiritual chi was divided into 3 parts, and one part was absorbed by the Thunder Yang tree. There was a Thunder Yang wood on the Thunder Yang tree, and it grew taller. The second part of the spiritual chi flew and went into Zhang Han's body. Zhang Han began to run the treasure-searching formulas, and the pure spiritual chi was continuously refined and absorbed by him, with such a pure energy. The last remaining defects caused by the last use of the Blood Shock Pluto incantation were removed. Then, Zhang Han's long stagnant cultivation began to improve. He was now at the building base level and the spiritual force was circulating for the 7th time in his meridians. Bang! A muffled sound came from Zhang Han's body. The barriers of the foundation late stage were naturally broken. A larger and more powerful spiritual force began to circulate in Zhang Han's meridians in accordance with the treasure-searching formula's route, which was Zhang Han's way of consolidating his enhanced strength. At the moment Zhang Han reached a new stage. There was a whirlwind in the 10 feet diameter area around Zhang Han. If Wang Zanping and the others were there, they would surely find that the whirlwind was composed of extremely pure spiritual chi. After Zhang Han absorbed the second part of spiritual chi energy, the third spiritual chi spread all over Mount New Moon. The pleasant-smelling grass became greener, the spiritual soil was more fertile, the spiritual water quality was also improving, and other things like meat grass also benefited from that spiritual storm. It was the change brought about by the 5th stage spirit treasure. Most of the energy was absorbed by the crystal vein, and the rest was absorbed by both the Thunder Yang tree and Zhang Han. Of course, that was also due to the pure spiritual chi emitted by the crystal vein, otherwise, it would be difficult to absorb the spiritual chi of the Heaven Sea crystal stone. Time passed by minutes and seconds. Soon, the energy waves in the area dissipated. But Zhang Han stayed on the ground for a long time until half an hour later. Then he slowly opened his eyes. Just at this moment, a dazzling light flashed across his eyes. If the others looked carefully, they would find a green lightning mixed in the light. When Zhang Han slowly stood up, clatter, Clatter, clatter. A crisp sound came from Zhang Han's body, just like firecrackers. At the same time, a strong qi was swept around. Foundation late stage. The concentration of Zhang Han's spiritual force had increased several times again. He was very close to the innateness stage. Several days prior, Zhang Han held the demon dancing sword and the fight with Gai Xingkong ended with a draw. Now he could defeat Gai Xingkong within 3 moves. He had been unwilling to be called Invincible Grandmaster before, because he was not powerful enough at the time, but he had advanced to the last stage now. He deserved the title Invincible Grandmaster. In fact, there were no Grandmasters who could defeat Zhang Han. Now there's the hardest bone left. Zhang Han slowly shook his head, looking back at the side of the Thunder Yang tree. That large tortoise shell was there. Chapter 559, A Journey. Golden Profound Tortoise. Now that its shell was a 4th stage spirit treasure, it should be at the innateness middle stage. According to the martial arts world standard, a cultivator at the innateness middle stage was equal to a martial artist at the earth realm in strength. But such a golden profound tortoise had been stewed into turtle soup by someone. Zhang Han knew that the turtle soup was good for cultivation, qi and blood, and he had also drunk a lot soup of that kind. But now he could only pick up the shell left by those great masters. Fortunately, the golden profound tortoise's unconscious soul was attached to the shell, which was more useful. If Zhang Han gathered the souls of 4 spirit beasts, he would be able to form the 4 symbols formation, which was not only a functional way of fighting, but also very powerful. A spirit beast soul at the innateness stage. Zhang Han stood under the Thunder Yang tree and looked at the large golden shell carefully. All of a sudden, his right hand moved. 18 cards were taken out of the space ring and hovered over the tortoise shell. All of a sudden, 2 cards stopped in the sky. One card contained the soul of a flood dragon, while the other was a normal card. At this time, the dragon soul hidden inside was motionless, as if it had felt the more terrible energy from the tortoise shell. King Ming Steel. Zhang Han's eyes burst with light. A King Ming Steel was formed entirely by a spiritual sense-mind trick that appeared above the tortoise shell. At this time, there were different changes in the King Ming Steel. There seemed to be a little green on the mark formed by the flowing light. It was the attribute of T-Wood Thunder. After those changes, Zhang Han's soul sense had been greatly improved. Although he had never had such experience, Zhang Han felt that it should be developing in a good direction. It was important. In fact, Zhang Han was a little nervous, but cultivators were always against the natural law, and that uncontrollable change made Zhang Han feel more excited. The King Ming Steel, which was the same size as the tortoise shell, completely fell on top of it. The golden and light green colors on the tortoise shell were alternately reflecting each other. When Zhang Han poured more energy into his King Ming Steel, something happened. Zoom. A corner of the tortoise shell vibrated and produced a wave of energy. It was fighting against a King Ming Steel and he didn't want to leave the tortoise shell. It's time to move. The 4,000 clouds above Zhang Han's soul sense sea suddenly gathered together. The thunder and lightning flashed over soul sense sea, and the dark clouds were frightening. It showed that Zhang Han was using all of his soul sense. At the next moment, just before the cumulus clouds turned into rain, Zhang Han stretched the distance between the clouds again to maintain this balance. At the critical moment, Zhang Han's spiritual sense emerged, like a storm, then fell on the King Ming's steel, making it burst into dazzling light. Sensing the powerful soul-suppressing force, the soul of the golden profound tortoise gave up the tortoise shell in an instant. According to Zhang Han's plan, it got into the card. But that was just the beginning. Zhang Han waved his right hand to summon the 5 elements furnace and threw all his 18 cards in it. Only after being refined could the soul of the golden profound tortoise be integrated with the card and become a unique attribute force. Just like the soul of the flood dragon, it could show the image of the spirit beast when it was alive and give full play to its energy. Fire. Zhang Han's soul sense turned into clusters of soul sense fire. With the help of the fire stone, he continuously refined the tortoise shell. 3 hours later, he succeeded. Zoom. A golden shadow appeared on the upper side of the card, which looked like a golden profound tortoise. As soon as it appeared, a thick and solid chi rippled out. At the same time, because of its arrival, the overall quality of 18 cards had been improved. But it was far from enough. Zhang Han clapped his left palm forward. All of a sudden, the figure of the golden profound tortoise flew out of the 5 elements furnace and returned to its shell. Under Zhang Han's command, the figure of the golden profound tortoise rose from the shell and was quickly covered by a layer of golden light. As for the shell, it was like a piece of red iron put into water, whose color quickly darkened. Finally, it turned into powder and dissipated with the wind. The golden profound tortoise returned to the 5 elements furnace with the tortoise shell's essence. At this time, Zhang Han's right hand moved. Suddenly, 28 third-level gemstones flew into the furnace one after another, which were refined into powder by Zhang Han. They attached to those 18 cards and continued to be refined into one with them. The process was slow. It took Zhang Han 2.5 hours to refine them successfully. Bang! Suddenly, the 5 elements furnace vibrated and made a dull sound. Bang! The 5 element stove vibrated again. The sound was much louder and clearer than before, as if the 5 elements furnace could not bear the things of it. At this time, Zhang Han hurriedly directed the 18 cards to fly out. Every card had changed from dim to dazzling. There would be a change in nature. Appearance couldn't determine the nature of a spirit treasure, but now, all the 18 cards had been upgraded to the 4th level. Although they just passed the standard point of level 4, they could also be called holy weapons. Not bad. Zhang Han sighed with relief. Zhang Han was satisfied with the result, but he felt a little tired from the high-intensity activities all day long. After resting for 10 minutes, he checked the time and we walked back to the castle. It's time to pick up Meng Meng. At the front of the castle, Zhang Han got in the panda car and slowly drove away from the cold mortal school. Xian and Zuf were busy in the company, and Zhang Han didn't want to disturb them. When Xian finished working, she would call Zhang Han first. Therefore, Zhang Han drove to the Saint Kindergarten himself. He arrived at only 4:25 p.m., waiting for a few minutes in the temporary parking lot, and then lined up to enter the school. Papa. Meng Meng's eyes lit up and she soon hid that little red flower behind her. When she ran towards Zhang Han, instead of jumping into his arms, she stretched out 2 small arms, palms down, holding something inside. Zhang Han knew it had to be another little red flower. Papa, make a guess. Meng Meng said happily. This one. Zhang Han pointed at Meng Meng's right palm. Yes, look at it. Meng Meng turned her right hand over and showed her little palm. There was a little red flower in it. Wow, a little red flower. Meng Meng is a good girl. You are excellent. So Dad owes Meng Meng another thing. Zhang Han smiled and touched Meng Meng's head, praising her. Then Zhang Han was about to take Meng Meng's hand and leave the campus. Meng Meng took a step back. Papa, you haven't checked this hand yet. Ah? Zhang Han was surprised. Then he smiled, crouched down and said, What's in this hand? Is it a surprise? Look, another little red flower. Meng Meng showed her left hand and cheered. I got 2 little red flowers today. 2 little red flowers a day? Meng Meng's so clever. Zhang Han exaggerated. Yes. Meng Meng took her little red flower back from Zhang Han's grasp and then murmured, Papa, let's go to find Mama. Let's go back. Zhang Han and Meng Meng went back to the panda car and drove directly to the company. After seeing Xian on the 10th floor, the little girl stretched out 2 small hands for Mama to guess. There was a flower in either hand. Seeing 2 little red flowers, Xian happily praised Meng Meng. Since both father and daughter had arrived, she placed down her work and then returned to the cold immortal school with them. The first thing they did when they got home was to stick the little red flower on the blackboard. Meng Meng has got 14 little red flowers. If you get a new one, you'll be rewarded with a trophy. Now that you got 2 little red flowers today, of course, we will reward you. How about a piece of cream cake? Great. Meng Meng couldn't help cheering. Let's order a cake. Xian smiled and took out her mobile phone. She thought the cake-making process was troublesome, and it was much more convenient to buy one. However, Zhang Han shook his head. Don't order the cake, a small cake will be ready soon. Wow! Xian's eyes lit up. Let's make a cake together. Meng Meng, do you want to join us and make a cake that you can have? Yes. Meng Meng replied in confusion. She didn't know how to make a cake. Therefore, the family of 3 entered the kitchen, chatting and laughing. Cream is made from egg white, milk and sugar. It doesn't look difficult. Although the production process was not difficult, 10 minutes later, Xian and Meng Meng's faces were stained with flour. They tried to wipe out the flour with their hands, only to make their faces whiter and whiter. HMPH. They rushed into the washroom to clean their faces. After washing their faces, they waited for a while, and the delicate cream cake was ready. They had cakes and fruits for dinner. Zhang Han didn't get the news of any new relic after exploring the relic of Mount Snow. The chances of finding relics couldn't be estimated, which was sometimes more and sometimes less. Zhang Han was now at foundation late stage and there was no way for him to advance before the Thunder Yang wood matured. Zhang Han kept training his spiritual sense mind trick every day and gradually promoted it. Happy times were always short. Zhao Feng was with Liang Mengkai every day, but they only held hands or kissed occasionally. In addition to those who went go to school or work, other members of the Wang family were either studying the 100 formation image or dealing with the cold immortal school affairs. That area was very large, and they would take the initiative to deal with some trivial matters. 2 weeks later, Meng Meng got the 15th little red flower on the last day and was awarded a 15 centimeters high glass trophy. Meng Meng was overjoyed because only 5 of his classmates had received the award. In order to reward Meng Meng, the family of 3 went to an indoor children's park. Although they had been there before, Meng Meng, Wang Yihan, Li Mun and other small partners still had a good time. They returned to the cold immortal school's castle at night. Wang Ming, Rong Jiaxin and Wang Ya, who had completely gotten rid of all the negative emotions, went to the living room on the 3rd floor of the castle. Han and Yan, the spring festival is coming. Do you have any plans? Asked Rong Jiaxin. We haven't made any plans yet. Zhang Han shook his head. Hearing them talking, Meng Meng, who was playing with toys, stopped. She was smart enough to know they were going to talk about their destination in the spring festival holiday. My parents called us yesterday and they wanted us to go back to the Zi family estate, but I'll sing a song in a spring festival gala held by a TV station. On the first day of the new year, we may go back to visit the Zi family or go out for a tour. Anyway, it depends on Zhang Han. Xian looked at Zhang Han as an obedient wife. Is the Linhai TV station included? Wang Yi asked. Yes, Xian replied. Then we can go to Linhai for the spring festival? Rong Jiaxin's eyes lit up as she said, Han, your second uncle called me yesterday and asked me where I was. He invited me and Wang Ming to go back for the spring festival. I told him we were all here with you. He was quite surprised and wanted us to go back together. Second uncle? It was a strange word, but Zhang Han remembered that his second uncle was Rong Yong, an official in Linhai. When Zhang Han's mother wanted to marry his father, Rong Yong was one of the few people who had agreed with them, and even given them some material support. Zhang Han saw Rong Yong twice in his childhood, who was always calm and never showed his emotions. That was Rong Yong in Zhang Han's previous impression. Go to Linhai? Zhang Han was hesitant. Yes, to go and have a look. I haven't been there for years, said Rong Jiaxin with a smile. Let's go and have a look then. Zhang Han nodded. So the journey was decided. Xian would be going to the Spring Festival Gala of the Linhai TV station, and the Wang family would stay in the Hanxian Pavilion. Now there were 100 members in the security group, and Zhang Han had planned to give them a holiday to go home for the Spring Festival. Everything was being prepared in an orderly way. Time passed quickly, with 5 days to go before the Spring Festival's eve. Zhao Feng received a phone call. It was a phone call that surprised him. Zhao Feng and Liang Mengkai were fishing in the back mountain then, and Zhao Feng rushed to the castle after hanging up the phone. After seeing Zhang Han on the second floor, he said in a deep voice, "Master, Ahu is injured. It's not very serious, but he won't be able to fight for a while. He asked me for help, and I plan to take my men there. By the way, I'll arrange your journey. I'll be picking you up at the airport the day after tomorrow. Well, don't wait for me, you can go on vacation after finishing your work." Zhang Han nodded. "Okay, I'll take this opportunity to travel in Linhai with Mengkai. Her brother will go to meet her and then date with Lilai," Zhao Feng replied with a smile. He knew that Zhang Li and Liang Hao were much slower than Liang Mengkai and him, but he hoped that they would get what they wanted. Zhang Han didn't say anything about it. After discussing with Zhang Han, Zhao Feng hurriedly contacted the security group and boarded a private plane with Liang Mengkai to Linhai. This time, their opponent was still the secret killing organization targeting Miss Liu. Although their attempts had all failed, they might get support from someone or get annoyed by Ahu and continue attacking them. 2 hours prior, it was still dark. In the villa where Liu Jiaoran lived, Ahu was sitting on the sofa, drinking beer, eating peanuts and watching TV. The housekeeper and servants didn't want to worry about him anymore. Whoosh! Suddenly, a beautiful girl in short sleeves and beach pants rushed down from the second floor. She was Liu Jiaoran. She leaned on Ahu, forcing a flattering smile. Then she massaged his legs and said in a sweet voice, "Do you feel comfortable, Brother Ahu?" "Not bad," Ahu replied casually. "Can we go out to have fun?" It was Liu Jiaoran's purpose. "You can't go out in the evening," Ahu refused. "But the nightclub doesn't open during the day, and it's just starting to open. I haven't gone there for many days. Brother Ahu, just go with me, please." Liu Jiaoran begged. She had been obedient after being spanked twice. However, although she was no longer against Ahu directly, she always had other ways to make trouble for him. Although their usual confrontation ended in Liu Jiaoran's failure, she never gave up. Only when she wanted to go out to have fun during the holidays would she please Ahu. Without Ahu's permission, she couldn't get out of the villa. Once she had planned to jump out of the kitchen window, and she did manage to climb down, only to find Ahu with a smile standing in front of her. There was another time when she wanted to sneak out at night and hang out for several days, but from midnight to 3 o'clock in the morning, she tried 3 times. Every time she carefully reached the door, she could always touch a hand, which scared her. After turning on the lights, she saw Ahu smiling at her. Gradually, Liu Jiaoran gave up the plan. At the same time, she found that she could achieve her goal through pleasing Ahu and pretending to be obedient. In the daytime, every time she did this, Ahu would agree with her. However, Ahu looked out at the night scene, sat up straight, shook his head and said, "It's not safe." Although Liu Jiaoran had been fighting against him in various ways, he still considered Liu Jiaoran's safety as always. "I want to go out. I want to go out and have fun. I don't care." Liu Jiaoran jumped on the sofa and cried, "I planned to meet with my friends." "No, you'd better stay at home these days." Ahu still shook his head. "If I can't go to the club, we can book a room. Brother Ahu, you are so powerful and I'm sure you can protect me. Otherwise, I will take you each time I go to the toilet, okay?" Liu Jiaoran pretended to be crying. She knew it worked on Ahu. It was true. Ahu couldn't stand women crying. After seeing that, he nodded helplessly. "Okay, promise me that you'll stay in the booked room." "Great." While being gazed at by the servant and the housekeeper, Liu Jiaoran jumped up excitedly, and then bent down to kiss Ahu in the face. I'm going to change. Liu Jiren ran straight to the second floor barefoot. Ahu's expression froze. He touched the place where he was kissed and looked at the stunned housekeeper and servant. Then he turned his gaze to Liu Jiren's back disappearing at the corner of the stairs and said loudly, "Did you take liberties with me?" Chapter 560, There was a parcel for you. After Ahu finished his words, he chuckled and shook his head. Ahu's character was quite rough and straightforward, however, sometimes, he would be more discreet. Consequently, he sensed slightly that Liu Jiren might have fallen in love with him. Consequently, Ahu had kept a distance from the eldest lady for some time, or to be more exact, had avoided her. However, the secretive killing organization had taken advantage of this and abducted Liu Jiren. Ahu had exerted great efforts to rescue her. However, he had not dared to stay far away from Liu Jiren. Consequently, as they got along with each other, Liu Jiren changed her attitude toward him quietly. Ahu had a good impression of Liu Jiren, who was lively and outgoing, yet obstinate and self-willed. However, he did not want to complete the task assigned by Liu Jiren's father, earn his money, and sleep with his daughter at the same time. Ahu thought that it was somewhat inappropriate for him to do that. At the same time, he thought that Liu Jiren might like him just a little bit, since she had not been in a relationship before. How could she understand what love was? As Ahu pondered, Liu Jiren, who was dressed in hip-hop style, ran over joyfully. At this time, Ahu, who acted slovenly on usual days, said somewhat solemnly, "Eldest lady, where do you want to have fun in these few days? I will try my best to take you there. I will go back home after Chairman Liu gets home." Swish. As Liu Jiren heard his words, her body trembled and the joyfulness in her eyes disappeared. Following that, she lowered her head. It was not until she had been silent for 2 seconds that she walked to Ahu's side and held his arms as she said in a somewhat low voice, "Let's go out and have fun." As Ahu sensed that Liu Jiren became somewhat moody, he felt somewhat uncomfortable as he said, "Okay." After that, he left the villa with her. Before they got in the car, Liu Jiren snatched the car keys from Ahu and said, "I will drive today." After that, she got in the car. As she drove the car, they left the residential quarter and headed east. They stayed silent along the way. In the end, as they stopped at a red light, Ahu smiled awkwardly and said, "This is the way to the Eastern District. I see you go to the bars on Xinzong Avenue often, don't you?" As Liu Jiren heard his words, she turned her head back, glimpsed at him, and lowered her head as she said, "I may like you a little bit." Ahu was at somewhat of a loss. After that, he looked outside the window. The look in his eyes was somewhat lonesome and distant. He said slowly, "I admit that I am handsome, but..." Ahu's words made Liu Jiren burst into laughter. She stretched out her hands and patted Ahu on his shoulders as she said, "You are right, you are such a narcissist." After that, she stared at Ahu and asked, "Actually, I want to ask you, will you come to my rescue if I run into danger in the future?" Ahu turned his head back and looked Liu Jiren in her eyes as he said, "Well." At this moment, Ahu had originally planned to say that he would not come to her rescue in the future, in order to discourage Liu Jiren from falling in love with him. However, surprisingly, there was a rush of impulse in his heart. He blurted out emphatically, "Yes, I will." As Liu Jiren heard his words, she smiled. After the wait at the red light was over, she stepped on the accelerator and drove the car forward quickly. Ahu asked, "You have not answered my question yet. Could it be that we are going to have fun in another bar?" "No." Liu Jiren snorted and said, "You will leave in a few days. I will take you to have fun in several other places so that you probably will turn to me on your own after you are done with enjoying your annual vacation." As Ahu heard her words, he smiled, shook his head, and did not say anything at all. After they arrived in the Eastern District, they parked the car in front of an entrance to Wanliu Park. "All right, let's get out of the car." Liu Jiren and Ahu then got out. It was dusk and many people were walking around in the park. However, As Liu Jiren led Ahu to walk inside continuously, people gradually became scarcer. In the end, they traversed through the rear end of a stretch of willow trees and saw a long corridor. There was a wall inside the corridor, where various notes were pasted up. This is a wishing wall. You can write whatever thoughts on the note and paste it on the wall. Liu Jiren took the lead to walk to one side of the wall, found the notes and pens in a location for placing things at the side, and wrote a sentence down quickly. I hope Ahu can come to my rescue next year. As Ahu saw her writing, he smiled sadly and said, "Eldest lady, I was a guy hanging around in the underground world previously. What's more, Liu Jiren tried to refrain from smiling as she said, I like you in this way so much. If you were a handsome guy in smart clothes, I probably wouldn't treat you like a treasure. Hee, I like bad boys." The look on Ahu's face was dark as he asked, "Am I bad?" Liu Jiren handed over the note and pen to Ahu as she said, "You should write one down." Ahu scratched his head and said, "I will skip it." However, in the end, he could not convince her. Consequently, he wrote a sentence down on the note, "I will come to the eldest lady's rescue in the future if there is an opportunity." However, it was unknown when that opportunity would come. Moreover, it was just a premise. But what he had written down made Liu Jiren feel pretty satisfied. She pasted Ahu's note under hers. Before she intended to say something, she saw that the look on Ahu's face had changed. Ahu held her in his arms directly and ran to the side. Liu Jiren, who was startled, screamed, "Ah!" All of a sudden, she found a shining light flashing across the place where they had been standing. The light cut off the chair on one side of the corridor directly. Following that, a man dressed in a black warrior uniform showed up. The look in Ahu's eyes was dim. It did not occur to him that a powerful master would be here. Judging from his skillfulness, he was not just a heaven stage master. When he had struck out the first sword light, Ahu had sensed that the fluctuation of the spiritual power was several times more powerful than his. It was clear that his counterpart had been well prepared before he came here. After the sword light faded, the martial artist, who had exposed nothing but his eyes, did not continue acting anymore. He stared at Ahu coldly, bowed slightly, and said in choppy Chinese, "Mr. Ahu, nice to meet you. I am one of the 8 middle-leveled ninjas in the secretive killing organization. I am here today to conduct my mission." As Ahu heard his words, he nodded his head continuously and said, "Nice to meet you, nice to meet you. We can move to the forest on the left side to start fighting. In that case, it will be an honorable ending for you." "All right, all right, all right, after you." If one did not hear their conversation clearly, they would even think they were greeting each other as acquaintances. The Muramasa glimpsed at Ahu and walked to the forest with a warrior sword in his hands. Ahu carried Liu Jiren and followed behind him. Swish. He made a turn all of a sudden and ran in the direction of the park's entrance. Ahu thought he might not beat the Muramasa in a fight against him alone. The Muramasa would only be scrupulous when he fought in a crowded place. If it were on a vast street, a Japanese soldier would dare not chase after his enemy and kill him. A heaven stage master would dare not do that either. Even a master at the Grand Master late stage at his peak dared not do something like that easily. Consequently, after Ahu greeted him for a while, he ran away quickly. The reason why his counterpart had said so was that he was highly confident that he would win an absolute victory. As the Muramasa saw Ahu turning around and running away, the look in his eyes was colder. He said, "Since I have given you a chance to die honorably, you should not blame me anymore." He held the warrior sword in reverse in his hands, crossed his hands, and perked his right hand up. All of a sudden, a faint mist lingered around his legs. He moved his body and ran after Ahu nimbly. Ninjutsu was also known as the hermit and hiding trick. After one combines ninjutsu with various kinds of assassination skills, one would become a ninja in the end. As Ahu heard that the Muramasa was one of the 8 middle-leveled ninjas, he was startled. He still had a chance to run away while facing a middle-leveled ninja. If there were a few more middle-leveled ninjas in front of him, he would not have any chance at all. Fortunately, after Ahu observed the surroundings, he did not find anything unusual. Consequently, he made up his mind promptly that he should run away with Liu Jiren. For Ahu, Liu Jiren's weight was negligible. However, to run away more quickly, Ahu directly carried her in his arms and ran at full speed. As he ran, he heard the sound of footsteps coming from behind, which was more than 10 meters far away from him. Instantly, he turned his head back and took a quick look around. However, he did not see Muramasa figure at all. However, the next moment, he sensed the killing intent all of a sudden as a bright light slashed at him from the back. Hiss! The roots of Ahu's teeth got cold instantly. He moved sideways immediately. However, it was too late. A wound was cut into his right arm. FK. Though Ahu intended to turn around and fight with him above board, to ensure Liu Jiren's safety, he kept running toward the outside for 2 minutes. During that period, he got 2 more wounds on his back. He had avoided the attack precariously every time. Run back to the car. The edge of the forest lay in front of Ahu. He put Liu Jiren down on the ground, turned around, and walked forward 2 steps. After that, he squatted down and avoided the Muramasa's attack. Following that, he formed his body into a peculiar shape and kicked out from the lower right side. Since Ahu had launched his attack from a tricky angle, the Muramasa was forced to lift his legs in defense and step back 5 meters. The Muramasa saw Liu Jiren running out of the forest. After that, he glimpsed at Ahu and intended to kill him. Ahu did have the intention to fight back. He intended to launch a few merciless tricks before Liu Jiren was out of his sight. After Liu Jiren ran out, she turned her head back, stared at the forest, and saw 2 figures standing back to back. However, within less than 10 seconds, Ahu leaned backward and took advantage of the opportunity to run out. The Muramasa walked to a place that was a few meters away from the edge of the forest, stared at Ahu, and let out a sigh as he said, "A pity, if I had attacked faster, you would have been beheaded. You were lucky this time. There won't be just one middle-level ninja like me next time. Instead, all middle-leveled ninjas will show up. You won't get through this new year easily." After he finished his words, he stepped back slowly and disappeared into the forest quickly. As Liu Jiren saw that there was blood on Ahu's right hand, she was so scared that she went pale and said, "Ahu, are you okay?" "I'm fine, let's get in the car first." The look on Ahu's face was somewhat ghastly. He placed his left hand on Liu Jiren's shoulders directly and landed his left leg on the ground gently. That was because a hole had been pierced through his left leg. After they got in the car, Ahu sat in the passenger seat directly, leaned backward, and semi-reclined while gasping. Liu Jiren ran to the driver's seat quickly, sat down, and anxiously said, "Ahu, you need to hang on. We will arrive at the hospital soon." She was so anxious that she almost cried. Ahu found her behavior funny and did not know whether he should laugh or cry as he said, "We don't need to go to the hospital, we just need to go back to the villa. I'm pretty fine, they are nothing but some external injuries." Liu Jiren did not say any other nonsense at all. Instead, she started the car quickly and drove back home as she said, "Then I will find a private doctor for you at home." As they just drove into the avenue, Ahu was more relieved. The moment he felt relieved, his left leg was in great pain. Ahu thought, "Hiss, that Japanese warrior is crafty. FK, he won't be alone next time. Could it be that he thinks I have no helpers at all? If my boss were here, he would be dead. I am going to find helpers now and F King beat them. Does he want to compete with me in number of helpers?" Ahu gritted his teeth, took out his cell phone, dialed Zhao Feng's number, then said, "Brother Feng, I was injured by a Japanese warrior. Come to help me quickly, otherwise, you won't be able to see me again." Since he could not beat the ninja on his own, he had no choice but to turn to his brother. As they got halfway, Ahu was somewhat recovered. After that, he stripped some cloth off his short-sleeved shirt and took care of several serious injuries, intending to deal with the injuries more prudently after they were in the villa. However, As the saying goes, misfortunes never come singly. As they arrived at the entrance of the villa, they saw that 6 cars had been waiting for them outside. 2 cars were Knigsks and the 4 others were Maybachs. Several young men were standing in front of the Maybachs. One of them had gauze on his forehead. As Ahu glimpsed at them, he smiled bitterly and said, "They are people sent by Xuanhuan, who might have turned to his eldest brother, the second young master of the Ning family." It was not easy to be a girl's escort. After Ahu arrived here, he had taught many grandmasters a lot of lessons. 90% of the trouble that he had made could be solved by the power of Liu Qingfeng. However, the grudge between him and Xuanhuan was an exception. The power behind Xuanhuan was quite strong. The Ning family in Linhai was one of the 3 foremost influential families. The number 1 family of Linhai city was the Ge family, which was an orthodox, old, and well-known family specializing in martial arts. A lot of the descendants of the Ge family were the disciples of some religious sects. Moreover, the old master Gu, Donglai, had entered the divine realm 6 years ago. At the same time, he had a divine weapon named Fireblade. That was one of the reasons why the Ge family had been prosperous. The second influential family was the Bai family. Compared with the Ge family, the Bai family specialized more in commerce. The power of the Bai family was enormous. The last one was the New Ning family, based on the Ning family's power. Originally, it could not have been listed among the 3 influential families. However, since the second young master of the Ning family, Ning Zangqi, had become well known, who was Ge Donglai's granddaughter-in-law as well as his close disciple, the communication and connection between the Ning family and Ge family became gradually more frequent because of this layer of connection. The Ning family was quite amazing. Even Liu Qingfeng needed to be at their disposal. However, Xuanhuan was quite lame. Not only had he talked dirty to Liu Jiren, but also he had tried to touch her. It was well known how he had ended up. However, it turned out he still intended to keep picking on them. Ahu let out a sigh gently as he said, "It would be better if the second child Ning was mature and sensible. If he was justifying a fault out of no reason, it would be somewhat not funny." Liu Jiren mumbled and said, "Though the second child Ning is amazing, my father is not lame at all. HMPH, this is my house, where he cannot do whatever he likes. I will cover you up. Don't be afraid of him." Ahu returned to the old him and could not help joking as he said, "Well, I am afraid that your size could not cover me up. Are you in a mood to make fun of me now? Tut, my size is not small at all. Forget my size, yours probably is the same as that of a needle." Ahu smirked and said, "As for whether my size is the same as that of the needle or not, I think you saw it the first day I was here, didn't you?" Swish. Liu Jiren's beautiful face blushed. She got out of the car gruffly, opened the door to the passenger seat, supported Ahu, and walked toward the villa. Previously, if the bodyguard had been injured and left a bloodstain in her car, she probably would have abandoned the car and replaced it with a new one. However, she did not mind that anymore now. All she cared about was whether Ahu was in pain or not, and so on. As Xuanhuan's people saw Liu Jiren and Ahu coming back, they all sneered. Consequently, amid their stares, Ahu and Liu Jiren walked into the villa. The housekeeper informed her in a low voice, "Eldest lady, second child Ning is here." However, as he saw the bloodstains on Ahu's body, the look on his face changed slightly. Liu Jiren replied, "Contact the private doctor first." In the end, she walked forward a few steps and saw the second young master of the Ning family, Ning Zangqi, who was sitting on the sofa. He was less than 30 years old, looked pretty thin, and was somewhat white-skinned. He had single-fold eyelids, the look in his eyes was somewhat distant. As Liu Jiren saw the scene, she took the initiative to say, "Second child Ning, why are you here?" Ning Zangqi said flatly, "Lady Liu, I heard that you've been pretty closed to your bodyguard recently. You have barely separated from each other. Everybody said that you raised a good dog." Based on his posture, he did not intend to stand up at all. As Liu Jiren heard his words, She was angry and said, "So, are you here to swagger before us?" The look on her face was dim. "No." Ning Zhangqi stood up, clasped his hands gently, and disapproved of Liu Jiaren's attitude in secret. After all, Liu Qingfeng was a key member. However, the girl he had brought up was somewhat finicky, who revealed all of her emotions on her face and hid nothing in her mind. There was a huge gap between her and her father. "I am here to hand over a letter of challenge to you." Ning Zhangqi took out the letter of challenge, which was read, as he said, "Originally, I scheduled the challenge date for tomorrow. However, based on his current condition, it seems it is difficult for him to move. In this case, I will give you 3 days. In 3 days, let's see each other in the ring." As he spoke, the look in his eyes was somewhat distant. He said, "You can choose to not go there, however, you can foresee the related consequence if you don't accept the challenge." What he implied was that his brother, Ning Xiaoshan, had not been beaten in vain. If Hu fought with him in the ring, his life could be saved. However, if he refused, it would be hard to tell how the situation would go. There probably will be one more body in the river the next day. Liu Jiren glared at him as she shouted, "You!" As Liu Jiren intended to say something, Hu chuckled, stretched his hands out, and took the letter of challenge. After that, he stuck the letter between his 2 fingers, threw it on the sofa casually, and said, "I accept the letter of challenge." "All right." Ning Zhangqi glimpsed at him in the end, turned around, and left. Before he left, it happened that he overheard some of Hu's whisperings. It was unknown whether Hu had done so intentionally or unintentionally. Hu whispered in a low voice, "Though he is not even a master yet, he likes to show off often." As Ning Zhangqi heard his words, the look in his eyes was cold. He paused for a second, kept going forward, and left the villa. Liu Jiren said, "Though you are injured, you still do not behave. Sit on the sofa quickly. The private doctor will be here soon." Hu shook his head and said, "You don't need to call a private doctor here. I will have some medicine to take this evening." That does not work. In the end, the private doctor, whom the Liu Jiren had asked to send over, arrived. As the female doctor saw the injuries on Hu's body, she exclaimed, "This wound is a deep one. Did you take care of it in such a rough way? Aren't you afraid that it will get infected? This injury is also a serious one. If it is not dealt with professionally, the infection will be easily caused. I can't treat him here, based on his situation. He must go to the hospital. The wound on his leg should be dealt with surgically. If you hang on for a while more, his leg may not be saved." As the housekeeper and Liu Jiren heard her words, they were greatly startled and wondered whether Hu should go to the hospital or not. Though they had tried their best to convince Hu, he did not go to the hospital in the end. In the end, he only asked the personal doctor to bind up his wounds professionally. At 10 p.m., as Hu sat on the sofa in the living room while watching TV, Liu Jiren by his side said agitatedly, "Didn't you say someone will send you some medicine at this time? How come have they not arrived?" Right at that time, the housekeeper knocked on the door and walked in, then said, "Eldest lady, a parcel is here." The delivery man said that it should be signed by the recipient. Liu Jiren waved her hands and said, "Put it directly at the entrance guard's place." As Hu heard their conversation, he grinned and said, No, number. It is my parcel." Hu thought. He came here so quickly. After that, Hu said to the housekeeper again, "Let him in." Following that, Hu stared at Liu Jiren, waved his left hand, and said, "Eldest lady, help me, I am going to pick my brother Feng up."